Oh, we're gonna have a little duel right now?
Well, let's do it, Jedi.
Sith will never rise again. You have lost. Okay, I was not very good that time.
Yep. Yep.
I just had to wait for the sound effect to play out, but anyway.
Yep, definitely for sure.
As many of you know, it is Star Wars Day.
Yep.
And we're making this little special video because we just got back from seeing a re-release of The Phantom Menace.
Definitely for sure.
This is its 25th anniversary, and I actually discovered this when Dune Part 2 was coming out.
Yeah, we were mentioning this before, back in March.
Yeah, when Dune came out.
Yep.
That this was coming around, because I saw a poster for it, and I did not know about this. So when I saw the poster in the theater, I was like, oh, this is interesting.
Yeah.
And then I texted you the image, and I got this idea where we could make a... Well, actually, you got the idea. Or was it me?
I think it was you, but it was game more of like the retrospect of the film.
Yeah, a retrospective of The Phantom Menace, because this is actually kind of a big deal, because this year they've been doing like 25th anniversary releases of some big 1999 productions.
Yep.
There was The Mummy, which I saw last week, and that was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
There was a Matrix re-release, which I've not seen the Matrix films, and that's something else for another review wherever I post that.
Yep.
And then, of course, the big one is The Phantom Menace.
Yep. Releasing in 1999, and it was one of the biggest hypes during that year.
Yes, it was. It was basically the biggest movie event of that year, because at the time there was a long gap between Return of the Jedi and The Phantom Menace.
Yep.
And so when it was coming out, people were so excited to see it. Everybody was pumped. And, you know, Lucas had been talking about getting these prequels made for a very long time.
Yep.
Around the 90s, that's when the CGI caught up, and he's like, I can make this, I can get this out.
Yep.
Because it was Jurassic Park that convinced George to revisit Star Wars.
Yeah. And ever since, when it first came out, major hype, but it ended up in disappointment during that time.
Yes, and what led up to the disappointment was basically when they announced the prequels were coming, people were really excited because there was going to be a new Star Wars film.
Yep.
Then the trailers came out, and back then there was no YouTube, there was internet, but back then it was like very slow speeds, a lot of QuickTime Player, if you remember that.
Oh, yeah.
That's how I used to watch my movie trailers when I was a kid.
Yep.
And so when this was coming out, people were so excited, there's going to be a new Star Wars movie.
Yep.
There were some people who didn't think it was possible, because at the time you had the original trilogy, you had the expanded universe and some other material, but there was no new film.
Nope.
And so for a lot of people, this was basically the event of a lifetime, because for some people, Star Wars is a way of life.
Definitely, for sure, because it became this huge phenomenon. And then, like you mentioned before, there's the expanding universe going across after Episode 6. But now, with this Phantom Menace, now this is, in terms of the timeline, dating back before the Galactic Civil War, before the New Hope.
Yes, it would basically be how we get to see Lord Vader rise to power, the Empire rising to power.
Yep, going back to Ben Kenobi's earlier years, see how he was trained as a Jedi as well.
And you see the other members of the Jedi.
Yep, you see the other members of the Jedi, where it was actually, there was a lot more of them instead of like few that were scattered. Mm-hmm. You get to see Yoda in his younger years.
In his prime, you could say.
Yeah, in his prime, yep. And you also get to see Palpatine when he was young in disguise.
Young in disguise, not quite disfigured yet.
Yep, not disfigured yet. And you also get to see who, not just who, Anakin during his younger years, which was the father of both Luke and Leia, but who was the mother.
Exactly. And then you get to see the Clone Wars, which they did name drop in Episode 4.
Yep, right away. It's like, you found the Clone Wars? And then that's
yes.
like...
I was once a Jedi Knight, the same as your father.
Probably guarantee a lot of people that at the time was like, huh? But probably like George Lucas, as quote from Back to the Future. You may not get this now, but your kids will love it.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
Which that quote holds true to the prequels.
Yes, and anyone who grew up with the Clone Wars series.
We were a part of that.
Yeah, so we were the prequels generations, you could say.
Exactly.
But the thing is about me and Tony, we were too young to have seen the hype of the Phantom Menace.
Yeah.
We were like, I was like, let me think. I was probably a couple years old when the hype was really big.
Yeah, and since it was 99, I was about 2 years old when the movie came out.
Yeah.
So at the time, the only thing I had seen was the VHS of the original trilogy.
Yep.
In the complete unaltered cuts, no special editions.
Yep, so the only thing we can see out of the Star Wars films from the originals and some of the prequels at the time growing up was VHS tapes.
That was, for most people in our generation, their first exposure to Star Wars. It was through VHS.
And because of that, you get to see Yoda as he was, as not digital, not like the CGI effect, as an animatronic.
Yep, because that's what they started out with. They didn't have a lot of CGI back then.
Yeah, so for those of you who do want to want to know how he looked like originally, you could always look it up on the internet. I know YouTube probably has it somewhere where there's like a side-by-side comparison between the animatronic or like the puppet versus the CGI effect.
Yep, and there's people who have restored the original films to their original look without the CGI additions.
And same goes for actually Emperor Palpatine too, a little bit as well, because in the
in Episode 5 they redid that footage.
Yep.
Because Lucas wanted to be more consistent with the prequel trilogy.
Yep.
Which is actually what he did with all three of the original films.
Yep, and that was why too, because again, look up the comparison too. In the original version, Sidious's face was a lot more.
It was a lot more shadowy, and they were basically hiding the actor, and they had a different voice for him at the time.
Yeah.
But then in later releases, they put in the actor who has been Palpatine for pretty much all the movies.
Yep, and the one that you're more familiar with nowadays.
Yes. And actually, I was going to get back to the hype of Episode 1 is because there was no YouTube and the internet was very slow at the time and you had QuickTime Player, people paid to go into films just to see the trailer for The Phantom Menace.
Yeah.
I have seen footage of people who did this, and they walked out like really excited because they were pumped. They were so excited that some of their favorite franchise was coming back.
Oh, yeah.
And I've also seen footage of news reports at the time of the midnight premieres of that movie.
Yep.
And I'm like, if you and I had been born a lot earlier, we could have been there. And we could have relished in all of that hype.
Oh, we could have. Although since it was 1999 and YouTube wasn't a thing, something like this, we wouldn't be able to do.
Exactly. But the one prequel that we did at least get a large amount of the hype for was Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I remember the whole hype about Revenge of the Sith, too. And for me, and probably you, too, during the time, because from 2002 all the way to 2005, there was the miniseries as well.
Yes, the one that Genndy Tartakovsky created, which is one of the best things he's ever done in his career outside of Samurai Jack and Primal.
Yep, and that was the Star Wars miniseries, the 2D version, some people like to call it. That's also on the Disney Plus as well.
But it's
vintage.
It's kind of weird seeing it on Disney Plus now, because if you watch it till the end, there is a Cartoon Network logo that shows up at the end.
It is, which is, because that's where it originated from, was Cartoon Network.
Yeah, and I'm like, how come Max, which has the Cartoon Network library and Adult Swim library, how come they don't sue Disney to get that removed?
Well, I mean, Disney is a large corporation, so you're talking about a large corporation against a decent-sized corporation, to say the least.
I wouldn't call Warner Brothers decent size. They've got deep pockets, just like Universal and Disney does.
On one hand, yes. On the other hand, they have been struggling lately, too, a little bit. Why do you think a lot of the Rooster Teeth was getting laid off?
Oh, yeah, I've heard about that. Just didn't look too deeply into it.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, when The Phantom Menace came out, big movie, and everyone pretty much was disappointed when it came out.
Yeah, and that's why we're getting to this retrospect, because this was, people in 1999 were a lot of disappointment, but for the prequel generations like us, after watching the sequels, and now watching it the Phantom Menace, now in theaters, this is where the retrospect comes into play.
Yep.
Where we get to greatly appreciate the prequels.
Well, I can appreciate the prequels to a point.
Yeah.
And I will get into that. I know this will get into a very big discussion.
Definitely, for sure, I know that. And it has been a hot topic, too, amongst the Star Wars community.
Oh, definitely. Because, yeah, I remember walking out of Episode 9 when we saw it, and I told you that I think I'm looking back a lot more fondly on the prequels despite their problems.
Despite their problems, yeah. And lately, too, I've garnered a lot more liking to the Phantom Menace. Attack of the Clones, I still kind of feel the same about, really. I mean, it was a lot more cringy stuff in Episode 2. Granted, the Attack of the Clones, the Battle of Geonosis and stuff like that, yeah, it was really nice. Don't get me wrong. I like Duke, I like that fight with Dooku and stuff like that, the whole battle and stuff like that. However, there's a lot of cringy lines in that movie.
Oh, yeah, I can name a few that are pretty cringy, but to me, Episode 2 I find to be a lot better than The Phantom Menace, because at least with 2, we're getting to a bigger, larger scale war.
We are, but I mean, I would say this, though, with The Phantom Menace, I can understand a lot more. Well, and this is just because also the fact that now we got a lot more information of the expanded universe, you could say. But not just going forward after Episode 6, but going backwards as well, in terms of how was it like, what was coming from to the prequels, which was the High Republic. And that being, less of these guys, because of the rule of 2, and they were hidden for a long time. So that means if there was no Sith, why bother?
Exactly. But they should bother, because they're coming back.
Well, now we don't in the prequels, but during the High Republic, there was no signs of the Sith. So if there was no sign of the Sith, the Jedi's going to remain peaceful and deal with other things as well, such as probably pirates or some trade federations, disputes, and other things as well.
Which are very small scale in comparison to a larger scale war.
Yeah, which was what they once had to deal with during the Old Republic. But when, once again, the Sith Empire disappeared and a lot of the Sith, it just became the High Republic time, where everything was peaceful for the most part.
Oh, definitely. And actually, before we get into this, there is one more thing I did want to bring up about the hype surrounding the Phantom Menace. But there were people who did camp outside a movie theater to go see the Phantom Menace.
Oh, yep.
And I don't know if we could have done that.
I don't think so.
Time permitting, because, I mean, Phantom Menace came out when most people are still in school.
Most people were still in school, and or work was still kind of work, and you still have to get going to work and whatever the case may be and stuff like that. It's not like you can, you were sleeping in and you could just remote into work.
Yeah, because they didn't have remoteness back then.
Nope.
But the thing is, those were pretty big fans of Star Wars who would camp outside the theater.
Yep.
And I kind of considered doing something like that when Jurassic World came out. Little story, because Jurassic World was my Phantom Menace. But that's a topic I'll save for the very end.
Yep.
But I think we can start going into the Phantom Menace now. And this is going to get a little lengthy, but you know how we get.
Yep, definitely for sure. And we can also go into the movie while also talking a little bit about what are some of the issues that made it the disappointment as well, and the retrospect to now.
Well, there are first couple of issues that I can bring up, for the most part. When the movie opens, and we're spoiling a 25-year-old movie, but you know what? We got to try and explain this a bit.
It's been 25 years since its release. If you don't want to be spoiled, then watch the movie.
Yeah, but then again, I mean, unless you purposefully unplug or live under a rock, I mean, I don't know what people do, man.
Don't know either.
But anyway, so the thing is, when the first issue with the Phantom Menace is that when you watch A New Hope, when A New Hope opens, it's very action packed. Like you see Tantive 4 running away from an Imperial Star Destroyer. That type of action gets you hooked into the story.
Yep, you're wondering oh my god, what's happening right now?
And then you get introduced to all these different characters.
Yeah, no worries. But it was just kind of like that, just popped out of nowhere, and you're just like, wait, what's going on?
Yeah, and it's like there's a lot of action going on, and then you're introduced to all these different characters, and it's really exciting and it's fast,
Yep.
And there's a ton of different movies that have done something like that. But with the Phantom Menace, there's not really a big action set piece that happens. Like, you see a Republic ship fly in.
Yep, a Republic ship, because they were going in for a negotiations, basically, because of a blockade over the planet Naboo.
Mm-hmm. And actually, with this ship, and this is something I noticed as soon as the film started, this ship looked a lot more redder than it did in the original prints.
In a sense, a little bit. But, I mean, for me, it was like, well, it's the same ship, basically, as it was, you know, when we first saw it, or multiple times.
Although my memory when I saw it the first time was that it wasn't like that bright red.
It was like maroon.
It was kind of like a darker red almost.
Yeah, kind of like that maroon reddish look to it.
Yeah, so I'm guessing this must be a change that Lucas implemented into it. But then again, if anyone remembers growing up with Lego Star Wars, either the first game or the complete saga, the ship's also really red in that.
Yeah, like bright red. Yep, I remember that one too. It was bright red in the Lego ones.
Yeah, so I'm like, maybe George saw that and was like, oh, I should probably put that change in the Phantom Menace.
Maybe. But anyways, you get to the Trade Federation ship.
Which does look really cool, by the way.
Yeah, think of it as, you know, the Death Star without its deadly laser, but then you also have kind of like this ring around it too.
Yeah, you got this arch ring and there's this big sphere in the middle.
Which can carry basically an army, basically, you could say.
And then again, those big spheres we see in Attack of the Clones, they're detachable on Geonosis.
Yep. And they're basically, you can almost say like the control center, basically, of like these giant, you know, rings.
Mm-hmm.
And for the droid army that they hold.
Exactly. You destroy that, you destroy the ships, you can cut off the connections with the droids.
Yep, that's for sure. And of course, in the episode 1, it was all just the battle droids and not the super battle droid that comes into episode 2.
Oh yeah, we didn't get introduced to that till episode 2.
Yeah, because I believe the super battle droid was meant for more warfare as it, you know, like an upgrade over the battle droids. But they still kept the battle droids, though.
And they kept the destroyers, or the droidicas.
Yep.
Which do have a memorable design and a very memorable blaster sound.
Yep, and, well, they're memorable all around when you think of destroyer droids or droidicas. They roll, they get up, they pull up their shields, and then they blast, and they start firing.
Yeah, definitely. But they were not easy to manage in Battlefront, I'll admit that.
No, they're not easy to manage at all. You have to go around them. I know in the first Battlefront, they were probably a lot more harder to kill than the Battlefront 2.
What I mean by that is, yeah, you had to go around in a circle to try and kill them.
Yeah.
But controlling them, especially with their movements and their shields don't last very long, you have to be a really skilled player to manage that.
I would say this. I think it was a lot easier for the shields to stay up longer in Battlefront 1 than Battlefront 2.
Yeah, I remember that. Although you would think the shields could stay up for an indefinite amount of time.
You would think, but I mean, it has its limits. But I will say this though: once the shields are down, though, it's a lot easier to destroy the droidicas.
Exactly.
Because that's all it took was like maybe like 3 hits and they're dead.
Definitely. But I think, yeah, as soon as the Phantom Menace opens, like, it's mostly a negotiation, like you said. And that's something that did throw people off a bit, because they wanted something more action-packed or something, like, a little more intriguing. But they're sitting down talking about trade disputes, and people were like, I don't think that's all that exciting.
No, because they want to stay away from the political stuff. And that was one of the big reasons why, or one of the big reasons why that people didn't like it coming out of the 1999 film was political stuff that people wanted to get away from. But yet, once again, political comes into the movie, but in a different taste.
Yeah. I mean, it's not particularly interesting politics, but it's there.
Yeah, it's definitely there. It's a different taste. This was more of basically trade disputes and stuff like that, that the Outer Rims were not getting their fair share, which is why they wanted to get one of the inner core planets. And one of them happened to be Naboo.
Mm-hmm.
Now, why Naboo out of all particular places instead of, like, I don't know, Kashyyyk or, you know, one of the inner core planet system?
Or Utapau.
Well, Utapau is part of the Outer Rims a little bit. But we're talking, like, some of the inner core planet system. Maybe, I don't know about Tatooine.
Tatooine, what was it? What's another one?
No, not Tatooine. Alderaan.
Alderaan, yeah, they do mention Alderaan in this movie, but
Yeah, so like you could have gone to Alderaan or instead of Naboo. You could have gone to any of the inner core system, but yet you chose Naboo. Who suggested Naboo?
well, it turns out I think there's probably Palpatine involved in this.
I would imagine so, just because
Well, they do establish Palpatine is from Naboo.
yeah, being a senator from Naboo, that's one thing.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's definitely for sure. I can, see more to it. That it's like, all right, let's just send the droid army to Naboo. But isn't that your home planet? Yes. Do you have any concerns with me sending a droid army to my home planet?
Oh, my lord, we will not question you. We'll do whatever you say.
Yeah, I was kind of going for a little bit a different thing. I was going to be more of like, oh, okay, we'll send the droid army there, because I don't think the Viceroys knew anything that Sidious was Palpatine. I don't think they did.
Yeah, none of them did. He was able to mask that pretty well.
Yeah, very well. He to the point to even the Jedi's were not aware at all.
Oh yeah, he did a pretty good job masking everything.
Yep.
So there's that. But yeah, when we first see Sidious, he's got the black hood over and he's got his cloak.
Basically, the only thing you could see was his mouth and everything else like that. Maybe the nose too, but like the face, like the mouth area, maybe the nose, but that's about it.
And you hear the famous Emperor theme whenever he's on screen.
Yep.
Which you all know how that goes. And yeah, so the negotiations break down when they find out these are Jedi.
The negotiations were short though.
Oh yes, or they could have kind of had a line, maybe as a joke, where someone goes, "We do not negotiate with Jedi."
That would have been, that would have made them sound tougher. But like Qui-Gon Jinn said, they're cowards. And so then when they contact the city, they're like, "Oh my God, we're doomed." City's like, "Get this little scaredy cat out of my sight."
Well, maybe Sidious could have been the one that's like, "We do not negotiate with Jedi. Kill them immediately."
Well, he sort of said that, was saying the Chancellor should have never bothered into this. Kill them immediately.
Yes, my lord. And so they blow up the ship, and then they try to gas the Jedi at first. That doesn't work.
No, because they're trained, as we all know, to survive any extreme circumstances.
Mm-hmm. And of course, they send battle droids after them, and the Jedi just basically plow through them.
Yep, plowed through them, but they were counterattacked by destroyer droids.
And then, of course, the Jedi couldn't handle them, and they had to get out of there immediately.
Using basically force speed, and that was the only time out of the entire prequel trilogy that they've used that.
Yeah, this force speed ability, does that make you run about as fast as the Flash?
It makes you really fast. I don't know, but probably to the ability of Flash, but still, it's like one of those things where it's like, when you think about it too, in this retrospect, Obi-Wan, you could have done this later on in the film.
Yeah, when he's running to get to Qui-Gon and help him out, he
Yeah.
could have just ran like the Flash,
Yeah.
and then he could have been there and they could have beaten him.
Yeah, he could have, and Qui-Gon could have been alive, and then the whole, it could have been a different prequel thing. Well, of course, it would have been a different outcome in the original.
Oh, yeah. But actually, in regards to Qui-Gon, this is something I do need to bring up.
Yep.
So anyone who watches the original trilogy and the prequels back to back may notice there are continuity errors between them. Because I remember there is a line in episode 5 where Obi-Wan tells Yoda, "Was I any different when you taught me?"
Oh yeah, for
And
Yoda.
you always thought that Yoda was Obi-Wan's master. But it turns out Obi-Wan had another master that was never mentioned in the originals.
And that was Qui-Gon Jinn, who if you want to look down the master apprentice tree, I mean, he sort of was not lying per se, because it started off with Yoda, then it went to Dooku, and then it went to Qui-Gon, then it went to Obi-Wan, and then it went to Anakin, in which Anakin then trained Ahsoka.
And also Star Killer, if we were to count The Force Unleashed.
Yep, and we'll draw a line somewhere like right here, basically, where it's like him being Darth Vader, which is Star Killer. This is also the legend part of the thing, which was used to be canon until Disney bought it, and they kind of scribbled that out. And then, of course, Ahsoka with another apprentice later on. But the point is, that particular tree is a very unique one. If you think about it, they all have their own unique training techniques to each of their apprentices. I don't know what Yoda did with Dooku, but Dooku was very unique. Was probably unique with Qui-Gon, and then Qui-Gon with Obi-Wan, Obi-Wan with Anakin, and so on and so forth.
I guess that is a good explanation. It's just, when you write something at first, you kind of have to stay consistent with the writing,
True.
Because it's like, at no point in the originals Qui-Gon was ever mentioned, and we all thought Yoda was Obi-Wan's master. And I remember reading a few Star Wars books, this was before the prequels came out, that said Yoda is Obi-Wan's master.
Yep, in one sense, yeah. I mean, he was technically everybody's master, if you think about it.
Yeah, because he was one of their strongest Jedi.
And he was the Grand Master of the Jedi Order at the time.
So it's like, that tree explanation you gave, that's kind of something that happened later down the road.
Yep.
Although, at the time, I'm prether sure people pointed out the continuity error of that.
Yeah, there are some of the continuity error. And there's also another interesting tree as well. We'll get into that one later. And that one involving Mace Windu's tree.
And then the other continuity error I kind of want to point out is there's a line in Return of the Jedi when Obi-Wan tells Luke, "When I met your father, he was already a great pilot, but I was equally impressed with his ability to use the Force. I thought I could train Anakin the same way Yoda trained me. I was wrong." When we see Anakin, when he and Obi-Wan meet, Anakin, he can pilot a pod race, but it's like he didn't see Anakin
in the pod race.
Yeah, he didn't see him in the pod race, and he didn't really see Anakin fly the Naboo starfighter. He didn't really see him fly a lot of ships.
No, but if you consider the fact that pod racing, like Qui-Gon mentioned, is something very skilled. You gotta be a very skilled pilot to do so. And the fact that he was able to fly the Naboo starfighter at the age of 10.
9, I think it
is. Or 9 to 10, basically. You're still a child. And successfully take down a Trade Federation control center ship at that age. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, that is pretty impressive. Although, I think Obi-Wan's line would make more sense if, he saw different flights that Anakin took. And maybe he was the one who was there instead of Qui-Gon.
Maybe, but and eventually throughout the rest of the prequels, he did get to see more of Anakin's flying, though. Especially in Episode 3 when they were flying to the, to rescue the Palpatine, Chancellor Palpatine.
Rescuing Chancellor Palpatine. Yeah. Yeah, it's just, I don't know, you take that line from Return of the Jedi and then you apply it here, it's like, wait, what? It's like you see the inconsistencies in George's writing a little bit.
A little bit. There are some inconsistencies, that's for sure. He tries to rectify that a little bit with some of the stuff in the prequels, though.
Yeah, but it's like, stuff like that will get pointed out.
That's for sure.
But anyway, yeah, eventually, they escape the droidicas, they escape all the battle droids, and then one of the Trade Federation people is like, "Sir, they've gone up the ventilation shaft."
Yep, and then they were able to basically sneak on board one of the Trade Federation's drop ships, basically.
Yeah, and actually that person who says, "They got up the ventilation shaft," did you ever see the joke where Red Letter Media's Mr. Plinkett goes, "How do you know that? Answer me, thing in the mouth face. What's wrong with your face?"
Yeah.
And then that character pops up again in the Attack of the Clones review, and then Plinkett's like, "Oh my god, what's wrong with your face?"
Yeah.
But, I mean, that's where where's "what's wrong with your face" comes from.
Yep, and then of course the droids still had some of their personality a little bit, even though from time to time they're able to speak with their viceroy's commanders. If they're down here, sir, we'll find them. But they had some personalities later on in the film, which I kind of find funny.
Yeah, that is kind of interesting. It's like they programmed an emotion chip into the droids.
Yep. And then, once they finally landed in Naboo, that's when we get introduced to the second issue that people had from the 1999 film.
Jar Jar Binks.
Yep.
Who has basically been used as a template for annoying characters in film.
Yeah, for a lot of people, yeah. Although this was a thing to try to sell toys, basically back in 1999.
Oh yeah, people said he's a very toyetic character, and I honestly can see why. Because Jar Jar in this film, like he's just kind of there, and he'll do stuff, but he's just mostly there for comic relief.
Yep.
And he doesn't really do a whole lot outside of maybe his clumsiness.
Yeah, it's mainly his clumsiness that probably got a lot of people annoyed a little bit.
Yeah, and I think if you cut him out completely, it wouldn't change a thing.
Probably wouldn't. But even if you, I would say this, even if you want to keep him in there, if you made him half the clumsiness that, just only half, if you cut half the clumsiness that he did in the film, he probably would have been a better character.
That would be, yeah, but also, like, improve the voice a bit. Because the voice, honestly, it's not that great of a voice.
Yeah.
And I get it, this is how the Gungans talk, and it's the way they are, but it's like, that voice didn't really sit well with a lot of people.
Probably not for a lot of people. I think it's just more of the whole comedy relief type of guy. If you cut that a little bit, and, because the other Gungans, even with their, like, Misa, no. Like the one,
Oh yeah, the one general character. He's like, "You say big trouble with the boss."
Yeah, because that one was, it's like, it's like that's fine basically, because that's who they are. That's fine, all right. But it's just that Jar Jar was like, high pitch a little bit. He's trying to be more funny and stuff like that.
Yeah,
cut that off a little bit. Probably would have been a better character.
Yeah, and if they had changed the voice into something else, it would have worked better. I mean, I don't find his voice super grating like a lot of other people do, but I'm like, yeah, it should have been changed.
Should have been changed a little bit. That's definitely sure. Especially if if you wanted to keep him.
Yeah, and then the other thing I do need to bring up about Jar Jar is that ridiculous Darth Jar Jar theory.
Oh yeah, that was probably a lot more popular. And it's mainly because of the yellow eyes. All right, he has yellow eyes like a Sith.
Yeah, but if he's a Sith, then why is he hiding it as long as the other Sith? And what's his grand plan? Like, I don't get that. Like, it's so ridiculous. Such a ridiculous theory. But Robot Chicken did have pretty good fun with it in their specials.
Oh yeah, definitely for sure. But eventually though, they're able to save Jar Jar from...
They saved Jar Jar from, like, the Trade Federation vehicles plowing their way through the forest.
Yep, which then Jar Jar was like, oh, you saved my life. I'm in your, like a life death, basically. Then he basically sends... I shouldn't say send, but have them travel with him to the Gungan city.
An underwater city. And I will admit, actually, the Lego game handled this scene a lot better.
Oh, yeah?
Like, we see Jar Jar in the Lego game. He's, like, sniffing some flowers, and then he sneezes, and then Qui-Gon saves him.
Yep.
And then Jar Jar hugs him, saying, "You saved my life.
Yep.
I will take you to the underwater city."
Yep.
I feel like the Lego game handled this scene a lot better.
Probably, but although he still was clumsy in that one. Although, Lego-wise... That's what they're supposed to be.
Yeah, but that was before the Lego games became overly jokey in my eyes.
Yeah, but anyways, though, regardless, though, they goes to the Gungan city, an underwater city.
And of course, the Gungans are like, "No, Jar Jar, you saw in big trouble with the boss."
Yep. Qui-Gon was trying to negotiate, try to help out the Naboo city.
Yeah.
But the king was not allowing it so because he viewed them as arrogant, basically.
Yeah, the Gungans, they basically view the Naboo people as you said, arrogant, and they're just not on good terms with each other.
Nope.
And the king's name is Boss Nass, I believe it is.
I believe so. And then, but they were able to get some passage and save Jar Jar from punishment, whatever that be, just getting punished or death. I don't know which. Did he say? Was Jar Jar going to be sentenced to death, or was it just be more of just a punishment per se?
Well, before that, Qui-Gon was like, "We need help getting to the surface. We shall help you get to the surface. We could use a transport. We shall give you a transport. And we'll send you to the planet core."
Yeah.
And then Jar Jar warns them, "Going to the planet core? Can't go out there without a guide."
Although I think eventually, even with him there, they could have figured it out on their own.
And then they do say they're going to punish Jar Jar, and then Qui-Gon tells the boss, "I saved his life. He's in debt to me. I want to bring him with me." Yes. And then Boss Nass is like, "Binks, you, sir, have a life debt to him?"
Yes.
Be gone with him!
Yep, and then Jar Jar, this is probably more of the comic relief line of him like, wait, why did I sign up for this?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're just here to tag along, I guess.
Yep, you're here to tag along, yep, and then they go through the
underwater parts of Naboo, and then Jar Jar explains, oh, reason why Misa was banished was because I was clumsy. You were banished because you were clumsy?
I think he sort of mentioned that he knocked a few things over, which is like, oh, so this wasn't just a little oopsie, this was like a big oopsie.
Although you think they could have banished him for something far more serious than that.
I think whatever the things that he knocked over was probably more serious.
Probably sacred to the Gungan people.
Probably, which was like, use a banish.
Or they could have banished him was if they caused the underwater city to flood and it accidentally killed a lot of Gungans.
Yeah.
That's something you could get banished over. But what he did, like damaging a few stuff, they could have been like, we are going to make you go to 200 hours of community service.
I feel like that could have been something, something minor. I think knocking some things over like sacred or having the city flooded a little bit, that probably caused banishment a little bit.
Yeah, if they'd done that, that would have made a little more sense. But I will admit, after that, this is actually probably one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie. When
the bigger fish.
Yeah, when they're going around in the underwater sub. It was like what was it called again? A BOGO or something?
Yeah, they're on like a little submarine boat, basically, or submarine speeder of sorts.
It's like a Gungan Bongo or whatever it was.
Yep. Anyways, though, they were riding in it, basically trying to get to Naboo or the Theed or the city of Theed.
Yeah, and they get chased by basically these large underwater monsters. The first of which kind of takes its inspiration from like an anglerfish, I believe.
Yep. Bites the wings of the ship, and then a bigger fish came.
Yeah, this bigger, massive creature, which they go, there's always a bigger fish.
Yep.
And it like comes in and eats the thing, and it's like, yeah!
Yep, and then we go back to where the invasion continues, and it's like, alright, sounds like the queen is on to us a little bit. We need to cut off all their communication before she gets suspicious.
Oh, definitely, and they're trying to contact the Chancellor, but then all the communication gets cut off like that.
Yep.
Well, not the Chancellor. He's not Chancellor yet. It's Senator Palpatine.
Yep. Senator at the time, Palpatine. And he was the senator of Naboo, so it made sense for them to contact their senator, her that represents them. And of course, communication was shut down, and the invasion began, which you also again see the invasion happening as they start to invade the city of Theed.
Oh, yes. And then, of course, they cut back to underwater, and we see the engine's powered down, but then they fix it. Then they're chased by some kind of snout-nosed serpentine creature.
Yep.
With crocodile-like teeth.
Then I believe the same creature, big giant fish creature again, saved them again?
Yeah, it's like, it like comes up, and it like tries to swallow them, they dodge it, and then it grabs the other creature and pretty much annihilates that thing.
Yep, and then, they found a cavern, which is a lot more safer. And then they were able to get to the city of Theed. Meanwhile, the invasion was happening. They were able to capture the Queen and the Royal Guards. And then that's when, Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, and Jar Jar with his comedic relief a little bit. But
yeah, Jar Jar, he doesn't really do a whole lot. He's just kind of like doing his comedy relief, like you said.
Yep, hanging on or whatever, in a comedic way a little bit. While Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan destroyed the droids that were sending them into a concentration camp of sorts.
Yeah, that's actually another thing I need to bring up about this film is that they say multiple times the people are suffering, the people are dying and starving, but we never actually see any of that. We're just told this through the characters. And someone should have told George, a key principle of film is show, don't tell. So if you're going to, have something like that, at least show it. But that probably would have increased the rating of this movie.
Yeah, that would have maybe to it was already like a PG-13.
PG, it could have been a hard PG-13 if they did something like that.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, all three Disney Star Wars sequels were PG-13. They could have done the same with the Phantom Menace.
Yeah, probably at the time. But anyways, regardless.
But if George does make another version of the Phantom Menace at some point or another, put some scenes in there that show the people of Naboo suffering. That's what I want to see in the next special edition of the Phantom Menace.
Or if there was an actual scene of Jar Jar dying, like there was, how like those fan films.
Oh yeah, there was a fan edit where they actually kill off Jar Jar.
Where he got stuck on that.
Yeah, he gets stuck on the sub and then he falls down the waterfall and then they edit him out the rest of the film.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if that edit is still in circulation, but it's real.
Yeah.
But yeah, they save the Queen and the Naboo guards, and Qui-Gon's like, we need to get her to Coruscant. If we keep her here, they're just going to kill her.
Definitely, for sure. And of course, it was like, oh yeah, we're the ambassador. Well, you didn't do a good job.
Well,
there was no.
The negotiations fell short, so sorry about that.
It's like there was no negotiations.
And then I think they should have been like, well, that makes sense.
It's like, how could there be no negotiation? Well, they blew up our ship and they tried to poison gas us.
Yes, and then they tried to shoot us down, so clearly they didn't want us there.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, okay, well then they had other plans. Alright, time to escape. And then they did escape, although only a few stayed back, while the Queen and her
royal guards, or a good amount of them, and her bodyguards, that's important.
Yep. And her double, basically.
Yeah, and before they get on the ship, the droid's like, where are you taking these people? We're taking them to Coruscant. Coruscant, that does not compute. You're under arrest.
No, he was like, oh yeah, you're under arrest.
And then,
like the personality, kind of like that doesn't go along with my order. Oh yeah, you're under arrest. Something like that. It's like, see, that's a little bit of a comedy right there, and at least nowadays sets a little bit, where it's like, oh, that doesn't compute with this. Oh, that's right, you're under arrest.
And then of course they slice them all.
Yep.
And then they get away, and they fly away. And then this little scene, actually, where they send all the astromechs to go repair the ship because the shields get taken down.
Oh, yeah?
The only reason why R2 does not get destroyed is because plot armor.
Yep, this is probably one of the few things of plot armor. Oh, of course, with R2-D2 alive, R2-D2 has that plot armor throughout the entire prequels.
Yeah, pretty much. And there was actually an astromech that looked just like R2 if you saw all four of them.
Oh, yeah, definitely, for sure. And of course, R2-D2 still acted like R2-D2.
Yeah, that's one consistent character throughout all these films is R2.
Yeah, because one of the first things when you get to see him was him running the Jar Jar, and he's like, basically was like, move out of the way.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, how rude. Rude? You were in the way.
And I have to get up there and repair the shields. If I don't get up there in time, we're not going to make it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
The only reason why he wasn't destroyed is because, well, he's an important character in all 6 films, or all 9 films. We can't have him die.
Yeah, we can't have him die. So, or at least in this case, he was important for the 3, 4, 5, and 6. We can't have him die early on like this.
And then, of course, they realize they don't have enough power to get to Coruscant, so they have to land on Tatooine.
Oh yeah, Tatooine. Where have we seen this before? A supposedly hero from the desert planet of Tatooine.
Oh yes, that's where we're gonna meet Skywalker.
Oh yeah, Skywalker. Yep.
But of course, one of the guards is like, "We can't take the Queen there. It's controlled by the Hutts."
And it's like, well, as far as we know, the Hutt is not hunting them down.
And there's no bounty on her, although Sidious could hire a bounty hunter, but no, he's got something bigger up his sleeve.
No, well, I guess he probably doesn't want to have like all this fiasco happening, so it's like keep it low profile a little bit. It's like, well, it's either that or a Trade Federation control system, and by all accounts, the Hutt's not hunting for her, so we go to Tatooine.
And which does make sense why they park outside the city, because the Hutts didn't really want to go into the vast desert.
No mercenary, nor bounty hunters, whatever, depending, but really, unless they're hired for money, they're not going to go off to the desert like that. No way.
And I bet a bounty hunter is like, I'm going to need a lot of water, and I'm going to have to conserve it very well.
Well, either that, it's like, pay me and I'll get her, basically, if there was a bounty.
You better pay me at least 50%, because I'm not going out there unless it's 50%.
Yeah. But anyways, though, they land outside Mos Eisley, and it was going to be Qui-Gon, Jar Jar, and R2-D2. Which R2-D2 does get praised for saving the people. But anyways, though, it was supposed to be those 3, and then Padme had to tag along.
Yeah, she's like, the Queen's curious. I want to know more about this place.
Oh, the Queen.
When she's really the Queen, but that's not revealed until later on.
Yes.
And of course, they go in, and one of the first things that happens is Jar Jar steps in some alien animal goo.
Yeah, again, comedy relief thing. And then they get to basically a parts shop, basically, to try to buy some hyperspace engines, basically, because their own engine was destroyed, basically.
Yeah, and then Watto's like, "Oh yes, we have all the parts. Come, I will show you."
And then he calls upon Anakin, which was the slave. He was a young boy who was a slave.
Yes.
Due to Hutt's gambling and stuff like that.
And eventually, they established Anakin and his mother. They were enslaved by a Hutt, but then the Hutt lost them when Watto took them.
Yep, due to a gambling bet on a pod racing.
Oh yeah, only Anakin busted up one of the pod races, or he busted up one of the pods during the race.
Yeah, or something like that. But either way, though, he then became ownership of Watto, which you could say, in a sense, he probably was a better master than the Hutt probably were.
Oh yeah, like we don't really see Watto do anything like dastardly or evil. He engages in gambling, but he doesn't really do anything seriously evil.
No, he's kind of more like the boss that, he's probably just more like a manager or a boss, basically. That's how he treats them, basically.
Yeah, and at least he lets them live in a decent home.
Yeah, a decent home, kind of like an apartment or like a townhouse type of thing.
Yeah, I think it's more townhouse. Didn't really give me apartment vibes.
Yeah, it's more townhouse, basically. So he allows them to live there, and it's like, hey, as long as you keep working for me, you can just live out your life, basically.
And I will not sell you out to the Hutts. I have many problems with them enough.
That's for sure. And he also will not gamble, the slaves, basically. He won't gamble on his employees.
Oh, definitely. He will never do that because he just loves money. He craves money.
Yeah.
Money is basically his life. But hang on a sec, folks. We will be right back in a little bit. Now, the thing I did want to mention about young Anakin actually is the kid that plays him, because this was another issue people had with it.
Yeah, I think this was issue number 3.
Issue number 3.
Yeah, that was the young boy, or at least how they written the boy, basically.
Oh, yeah. And I'm just going to say this right now, but I prefer Hayden Christensen over Jake Lloyd.
Well, yeah, but Hayden Christensen was a lot older than Jake Lloyd, though. We gotta keep that in mind. And they needed a young Anakin, or at least a 9-year-old boy, basically.
Yeah, it's just, Hayden, he does have some weak spots, but I like him a little more. Because the problem I have with Jake Lloyd, and I know it's a young kid and all, but sometimes Jake Lloyd comes off as really whiny in this. He comes off as really whiny, and the way he acts, because there's much more talented child actors.
Yeah.
It's just apparently Lucas auditioned over 3,000 kids for this role.
Yeah, he probably did, and Jake Lloyd was the best among them.
At least according to Lucas, but honestly, his acting, it doesn't really come off as award winning. I don't know if it's wooden or if it's the material that he has to work with.
I want to say it was probably more of how it was written, basically. He could have done a better written job of the kid Anakin, because this is a young he probably figured this is a 9-year-old boy who's just about to learn the ways of a Jedi, and what 9 or 10-year-old boy wouldn't be so young and exciting, being told that, hey, yeah, you're gonna be a Jedi.
There's a little bit of that, but it comes off as cringe, especially when he goes yippee or wahoo.
Yep, that is true. I will not argue with that one, because it was a little bit ugh.
Yeah, let's have another edition of the Phantom Menace where those are cut out entirely.
Yeah, or at least have different sort of excitement, celebratory thing.
Something like that would have come off less cringe. And then there are some moments where Jake's acting, he's doing these faces, and then I'm like, stop making that face.
Some of those faces, like from which scenes?
The first scene where we see him and he's talking to Padme, there's a few faces where he's like, I'm a person, my name is Anakin. I did not like that face he was making.
Oh, when he was upset a little bit?
Yeah. It's not really upset, it just comes off as kind of a little aggressive. But 9-year-old aggressive-ish.
But he probably... I bet the scriptwriter was trying to say more of
well, George was the one who wrote this.
Yeah, George was trying to make it more he felt insulted because she called him a slave.
Yeah.
And not a person.
Yeah, I just would have done something like where it would have been kind of a little more calmer. He would have, just tried to hold it in a little, because I know he doesn't like it, but sometimes you kind of got to hold it in just a little.
A little bit, but they do keep on that sort of like energy a little bit throughout the Clone Wars, though, a little bit. Only in episode 3 where he got a lot more better with that, per se.
Yeah, Hayden did really good in episode 3, I won't lie.
Yeah.
But, with Jake, there's just some faces he makes. Anytime he's, like, sad, too, he kind of has this, like, pouty face that he makes.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't think I like that.
Yeah, probably could have done a better sad instead of making it, like, seem like most part it was the poutiness. But, yeah, because sometimes when he was a little bit upset, it seems like a pouty upset.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's like, of all the 3,000 kids, this was the one that George thought was the best, and honestly, he really doesn't come off that great. And his voice, too, can be a little, I don't think I like his voice that much. Yeah, I don't know if his voice is more grating than Jar Jar's is. Perhaps it is.
I would probably rate Jar Jar worse. No offense, Bess, but
I don't think it was Ahmed. I think I say his name Ahmed Best's fault.
Yeah,
the way Jar Jar turned out.
No, I think it was just more of some of the faults of George Lucas during the script writing times.
Yeah, and it's like because George did start writing the Phantom Menace in 1993, and then production began in '94.
Yeah.
And it's like you couldn't bring a co-writer on board to help you out a little bit.
Yeah, wasn't like I know Dave Filoni was part of the group per se, which again I'm pretty sure Filoni at the time was a lot young though, probably around our age when this was in development. So it's not like he can voice out his opinion at the time basically, and how comparison to now since he kind of grew, he worked with Lucas for like a long stints of time, where now he can kind of implement what Lucas thought basically.
Yeah, he did get a little more of that later on.
Yeah.
But I couldn't see his name in the credits.
Yeah, and we probably missed this somewhere in the credits somewhere. But anyways, though.
Yeah.
But the point is, though, you probably was right. There could have been like a better, if there was somebody that understood Star Wars really well as like a co-director or writer.
A co-writer would have been nice because with the original trilogy, there was more than one writer.
Yeah.
Only with the prequels, it was mostly George. He did bring in a co-writer for episode 2.
Yeah.
But I don't know how much of the contribution the co-writer gave to it.
Yeah. So it's wondering there, wasn't there somebody that could have been like, closely with him? Yeah, like I said, at the time that could have done it. But
another thing that did get singled out with George's writing in this and the other prequels was people have said he's not that good when it comes to dialogue.
Which showing up, I would say, I know episode 1, there are a good amount in episode 1. Definitely a lot more in episode 2.
Oh, definitely. There was one line in particular that stood out in episode 1 that kind of bothered me. We will not report until there is something to report. And I'm like, what?
No, it made sense.
Well, it's like, we cannot report something until we have confirmation of whatever. That would have made a little more sense. Because it's like, I don't think you say the exact same 2 words in the same sentence.
Well, because it's like, again, they were like, no need to report something unless there is something to report. It's like, well, if there's nothing to report, why bother?
Well, I just would have said, we can't report anything until we get confirmation or something like that.
Yeah.
I would have liked that a little more. But yeah, to sum up what has been going on here, I don't think it's Ahmed Best's fault of the way Jar Jar turned out. It's just the way that character was handled.
Yeah, I think that was more the issue. It's just more of how the character was handled.
Yeah.
With both Jar Jar and young Anakin.
Yeah, that's the case too. Because with Jake Lloyd, it's like, I kind of want to say it's his fault for not giving a good performance, but at the same time, it's like, well, that's the direction George gave him and the way it was written.
Yeah, and that got a lot of backlash upon Jake Lloyd, the kid Jake Lloyd. It's not like this is like, this was like a 30-year-old actor basically that people were bashing. This was a child, and it was so bad on him that he literally had to retire from acting after that. Retired from acting and went south basically for him fairly quickly.
Oh yeah, it wasn't until like years later we found out he has schizophrenia.
Yeah.
And apparently he's got like a ton of other problems, and people have said it's because of the effect of Star Wars. He ultimately is the way he is. But his family has later gone on to say, oh no, he was protected. Yeah, there was bullying and some other problems, but he was mostly protected. It's just his family's got a history of schizophrenia.
Yeah, that part, yeah. That if it's like the family thing with the schizophrenia, yeah, that I can understand. You know, that's like, all right, I can understand that a little bit. But I would imagine, though, it didn't help, though, with him being bullied because of his acting job in Star Wars.
Yeah, and that was like such a big film at the time. I mean, you couldn't escape it.
No, yeah.
You really couldn't.
No, so that was, I would say, what made it worse was basically the fault of the Star Wars fandom a little bit on, you could, for a good chunk of it, on Jake Lloyd's issues.
Yeah, I mean, Lloyd, he obviously couldn't handle it very well, but Christensen, he seems to have at least, you know, not given in to the negativity. And he handled it a little better.
Yeah, no, and I think long run wise, that's when nowadays they started to appreciate him a lot more.
Oh yeah, I've seen some of that. But Star Wars isn't really what hurt Hayden Christensen's career like some people thought it was going to.
No, it didn't. He went on to do some other films, though.
Yeah, I remember, like, post-Star Wars, they tried to make him an action star with Jumper, but that didn't work out, and he kind of fell to the side after that.
Yeah, I mean, he went on to do other films, but he is a very skilled duelist, too, like, saber duelist. Because not a lot of people can able to do that, you know, that little turn that he does with the lightsaber. Almost any, you know, from episode 2 and 3 and other Star Wars stuff that he did, where he kind of like does a little back twirl with the lightsaber.
Oh, well, that's an interesting little fact to find out.
Yeah, he is a very skilled duelist, and I think I remember he was part of like the production of remember the Revenge of the Sith game.
Oh, yeah, the tie-in game.
The tie-in game. He was a part of that production of teaching, like, the lightsaber combat, basically.
Oh, he was teaching the developers, like, he was teaching them how to do this.
Yeah, like, the whole, like, lightsaber, and also, he was able to showcase a little bit of how he does it as well. You know, kind of like the back twirl and all the other lightsaber as well.
Oh, that's nice when you have a reference point.
Because he was a lot of reference points in terms of lightsaber combat.
Oh, it's always nice when games do that. But where were we? Let's see. Oh yeah. So anyway, Qui-Gon, he's trying to, you know, get the parts, and he's like, credits will do fine. No, they won't. What are you, a Jedi twirling your hand around like that? I'm a Droidarian. That doesn't work on me. Only money.
Yep, and it is established in the Star Wars universe that there are certain species that are resistant to, you know, Jedi
mind tricks.
Jedi mind tricks and stuff like that. Toydarians, the Hutts, are another one.
Yeah, because I remember Jabba the Hutt said, your Jedi mind tricks cannot work on me, Skywalker.
Because generally speaking, the Jedi mind tricks, as Obi-Wan mentioned in The New Hope, it works on the weak-minded. Toydarians and the Hutts are some of those that are
not weak-minded.
They are strong-minded because they have, they're focused on a lot of things, or they focus on a singular objective or goal in mind. Basically, for Toydarians, money. Same thing with the Hutts.
Oh yes. So the deal falls through, and then he basically tells Obi-Wan, "We got to find a way to come up with some money so we can get the parts." And Obi-Wan's like, "Well, we could sell the Queen's wardrobe, but that's not going to get you enough."
No, because the idea is they needed something real. No credits, so you can't... It's basically, think of it as this. You can't use a credit card or a debit card. Well, maybe not. Yeah, you can't use a credit card.
Yeah, it's like some places are like, we accept cash only. We can't use cards.
Yeah, we can't accept, credit cards and stuff like that. We need something real now. So it's like, find a way to make up the cash or the gold or whatever, otherwise no deal.
Oh, yeah. And eventually they run into Anakin again, and he takes them back to his place where we meet his mother.
Yep.
And then they explain, like, what slave life is like outside of the Republic.
Yep, because Phantom Menace was like, well, there was supposed to be this anti-slave thing. It's like, well, that doesn't work outside the Outer Rim system. Which is like, basically, it's like, again, you have the inner core, and then you have the Outer Rim. How far does the rule kind of goes, basically?
Depends on how much control the Republic has.
Yeah, which the Republic, in most part, has the inner core systems basically, under control. It gets sketchy a little bit once you get to the Outer Rim.
Yeah, definitely. That's like I'm trying to come up with a good metaphor here, but it's like, you know, you got your control in this part. That's all the safe stuff. When you get outside, that's where all the sketchiness comes. It's like getting out of the safe neighborhood into the bad neighborhood.
Sort of. If you're thinking of it kind of like a Chicago type area, if you're thinking kind of like Chicago, I wouldn't say that. I would say think of it as like a kingdom, basically, where the closer you are to the castle, the stronger the security is. Once you get outside towards the rural areas, that's when the rules tends to get less apply, basically.
Although, to be fair, the rural areas do have some well-rounded folks. There's some weird people out there, but there's some good areas, too.
There are, but the idea is the closer you are to the cities or the closer you are to the castle, the stronger the enforcements are. And then the farther out you go, the less rules and placements are, basically.
Yeah, although you would think some places have decent enough enforcements that are good enough to have the areas be safe. But then again, there's probably planets outside, wherever they are, that don't have a lot of inhabitants.
Not a lot of inhabitants, and or how the doesn't have enough firepower to defend themselves against people like the Hutts.
That is true. Although Dagobah is mostly unpopulated. There's nobody living on Dagobah.
No. I mean, if there's nobody living there, why would someone try to do that, exploit that, if there's nothing there?
Oh, yeah.
It's just basically a swamp planet.
Yeah, then there's the Dark Side Cave, which actually has some really interesting lore behind it, but I don't think I want to go into that right now.
Not right now, because we gotta get back to Tatooine. Also, before we get back to Tatooine, actually, we must go back to the Trade Federation a little bit, where they told...
they tell Palpatine, the Queen has disappeared, and now we can't sign the treaty.
And it's like, I want that treaty signed. And it's like, well, there was one starship that went, and it's out of our range. I don't know what you want us to do. It's like,
I will find it, and I have the solution.
It's like, I will send my apprentice to deal with your issue. It's
yeah.
And it's like, now this is getting out of hand. Now there are two of them.
Oh, we should not have gotten involved.
Yep.
And so, yeah, Palpatine and Darth Maul, they're on Coruscant, and then Maul's like, Tatooine is sparsely populated. If the choice is correct, I will follow to them.
Yeah, because they were trying to, basically it's like they're trying to find it out, which then it's like they probably sent a comm signal to one of the cruiser. And it's like, don't send anything back. But I'm pretty sure even if you sent something out and it got there, you could, someone could be like, well, it reached to this point in Tatooine. I know Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan was trying to make it more like, if you send anything back, they'll detect where we are because of the trace point. Well, there was the other hand that people forget. If you sent it and it got through, they could detect on where it last, was sent to.
Oh, yeah. And then, Maul's like, at last we'll reveal ourselves to the Jedi. At last we will have revenge.
Yep. Yeah, so it's like... So then he went to... So he goes to Tatooine, but meanwhile, though, while they're discussing Anakin's, household, the Skywalker household...
That's when they bring in pod racing.
And also before that, the introduction to another friend...
C-3PO.
Yep, C-3PO, who is not completed yet.
You see his wires and some metal attached. And I think there were some people who took issue with the fact that Darth Vader built C-3PO.
Why is that?
I think it's like, they're like, really? Really? That's the origin of C-3PO?
It's like, Darth Vader was the one that made him? Why couldn't he recognize him then? Keep his identity a secret?
Yeah, that's kind of another thing, too, is like Anakin interacted with R2 and C-3PO for so long. But then again, Vader did not really see them a whole lot in the original trilogy.
Not a whole lot, although he did see... Well, he probably did see R2 at least once when he was on episode 4 while flying, attacking Luke. And he probably saw C-3PO once on the back of Chewbacca.
Oh yeah, like Vader could have given him like a knowing look in the carbonite scene.
Yeah.
He could have given him a knowing look, but I don't think Lucas thought that out.
No, but you also, on the other hand, though, you want to keep the identity of Anakin Skywalker a secret a little bit. So having the thing that you created not know who you are probably a good idea, because otherwise if C-3PO would have figured out that Darth Vader was Anakin, that would have been like, oh no.
Yeah, that could have been the case. But yeah, some people didn't really like the origin of C-3PO. They were like, I don't think I would have wanted to know that. It's kind of like when you try to give a backstory to every single character, people typically don't like the answers to the backstory.
Yeah, sometimes people like the answers, sometimes they don't.
Yeah. But I think really in this case, it's so small to think about, I guess.
It's just more of it's more of an interesting fact rather than like, I don't want to know about that. It's like, why not? It's an interesting fact that Darth Vader made C-3PO. Granted, it was for a different purpose.
I just have to wonder if people were questioning like C-3PO's origin and how he came to be.
Yeah.
That's maybe something people were not thinking about at all.
Yeah.
And they're just like, oh, really? That's the explanation?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
For me, it's like, it's pretty small when you think about it.
Yeah. But anyways, though, so they discussed the pod racing, and because of that, they're discussing how the only weakness to the basically to the Toydarians is, with greed comes gambling.
And so they come up with this idea, we could enter ourselves into the race, and then we could win all that cash and get you the parts.
Yeah, win enough cash to get the parts, basically. Which, the Toydarian, he agreed to the deal, basically.
Yeah, Qui-Gon gets out a hologram of the Naboo ship, and he's like, this is our ship. It's in good condition, just the parts are not broken. That's what needs fixing. But if you win this, we'll give you the ship.
And since the ship looks really nice too, and again, he has the parts to get the ship repaired. That's still a good value right there, because it's like, hey, this ship that could work if I put in my parts into that. It could work. That's a fair thing.
Definitely. And then again, with the pod racing, they describe how dangerous it all is.
Think of it as NASCAR, but with the ability to, to be able to kind of like actually knock people to the side, basically.
Oh yeah, or actually think of it as Gran Turismo.
Oh yeah.
Because they establish in Gran Turismo, it's very dangerous racing. You gotta have split-second thinking.
Yep.
The same thing applies to this.
Yep.
And then we do see that Anakin has built a pod.
Yep.
And it works pretty good.
Yep. He was able to build a pod racer on his own too, and it works pretty well.
We can add engineering to his skills outside of piloting.
Yep. And Qui-Gon was able to test out his blood sampling because...
Well, before that, Qui-Gon does mention, did Anakin have a father?
And the mom goes, there was no father. So that kind of was like, that gave Qui-Gon a little bit more of a suspicion, a little bit like, there was no father, she gave birth to him. Okay, I need to investigate this further.
And actually, this brought up a little theory. Was Darth Plagueis Anakin's father?
This was I think it was no, not really. He had the idea, which Sidious took upon himself, because there is a comic where it was actually shown that Sidious was the one to actually kind of like, you could say, birth Anakin.
So he basically influenced the midichlorians and basically told them, create the ultimate Sith warrior for me.
Yeah, so to speak, because it was like yes, it was kind of like my idea for this. Well, it was his idea inspired by Plagueis, basically, because Plagueis was all about the idea of life, basically, trying to figure out a way to become immortal. So he became more experimenting with life, death, and trying to create, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, because I remember in episode 3, Palpatine tells Anakin he could use the Force and influence the midichlorians to create life.
Yeah, so Plagueis brought about the idea of doing that. Sidious just went about it and did it. In the comic book, it showed that he kind of did it to Anakin's mom, which in a theoretical sense, you could say Palpatine was the father, even though it wasn't like blood. It's not blood related, but it was basically an influence.
Yeah, and it's like, why did he? But if Sidious had this ability. Why did he choose Anakin's mother of all people? He could have tested it on anybody.
I think that's the idea. He just tested on anybody. It just so happened to be Anakin's, mom.
I mean, he could have tested it on a powerful female Jedi.
I think could have, but he wanted to test out. He wanted to test out on the capability, so he just tested on a normal person, and it's just that normal person happened to be Anakin's mom, and it turned out that he was, a very powerful. He grew out to be a very powerful Force user, because he had the highest midichlorian count, which I think that was actually the 4th issue that people had with the film.
Yeah, the
That was
midichlorians.
the midichlorians, basically, where in episode 4...
Yeah, they establish, Obi-Wan says, well, the Force is what gives a Jedi his power. It's an energy field created by all living things. It shapes us, it binds the galaxy together. And so people were like, oh, it's a spiritual thing. But then in this movie, they backtrack on that, and it's like, no, it's a scientific thing.
Yeah, they kind of make it more, scientific in terms of like almost like a blood sort of like a stem cell, basically.
Yeah, so basically no one can become a Jedi. You have to have special genetics to become a Jedi.
Yeah.
It's like in X-Men, you need the X gene to be a mutant. If you don't have the X gene, you're not a mutant.
Yeah, or it's like, I don't know if it was like exactly that. It does sounded like that though, which is why people were so upset by it, because it sounded like you needed like that sort of thing to become a Jedi.
Yeah, and it contradicts what had been established in Episode 4.
Yeah, which was the fact that anybody could be a Jedi.
Yeah, and that's actually something people didn't like when it came to Finn. We all thought he was going to be a Jedi. Nope! And his character got screwed over.
I think everybody wanted Finn to be a Jedi because they all thought he could have been. Plus, he had the lightsaber.
Yeah, like we all...
Well, not this lightsaber, but, the lightsaber like that.
Yeah.
Like a blue lightsaber.
We're talking about this one. Oh.
Well, Anakin, but, a blue lightsaber, though.
Yeah, and it's like, we all thought he was going to be a Jedi, and that was actually really cool, but nope.
Nope.
Rey's the Jedi.
Rey is the Jedi for reasons at the time of Episode 7 unknown until it was later discussed in Episode 9.
Which, yeah, that was controversial in and of itself, but anyway.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like, when I first looked into it, I thought Plagueis was the father of Anakin, but now you're telling me Sidious is the real creator.
Yes, Plagueis had the idea, and he had the idea of it, basically, and he was experimenting with it. It just so happened in the comic book, there was a comic book that said that Palpatine went on to do it, actually, in terms of with Anakin.
Oh, yeah. And then, of course, Qui-Gon gets a blood sample, he tests it, and they find out this counts much higher than Yoda's.
Yep. Although, I will say this, Plagueis in the book, which is his own book, called Darth Plagueis, because it was an idea that was created, though, from his, it was something of his idea, and when it was mentioned to him, and the book was actually during the prequels, basically, when he figured out about a young boy with a high, midichlorian count from a person in Tatooine, or something like that, that's when Plagueis got so scared, basically.
So wait, you're telling me Plagueis was alive during the time of the Phantom Menace?
He was, until the night of when Chancellor won the election.
Oh, so that's wow.
And when Palpatine won the election, they basically had a night of celebratory, drinking. And then, as Sidious told Anakin, in his sleep, he killed him.
Oh, that's really interesting. So Plagueis was alive during the Phantom Menace, and Sidious he had an apprentice of his own.
Yes, basically. Although I believe this was under Plagueis' knowledge. But Sidious had the excuse of the acolyte, or the apprentice, which does not contradict, or at least it does not break the rule of two thumb. Which is also why when Vader and Sidious had a lot of those Inquisitors, it did not break that rule of two.
So the Inquisitors are basically acolytes, they're not really apprentices.
Yes.
Okay, I definitely probably need to watch the Rebels show.
Yeah, they're kind of like
understand that.
acolytes or stuff of the sort, basically, where they're not really an apprentice. They're just dark force users, basically.
Dark Fork users are basically they're basic. What's the good term? What's a good term I can use? They're hitmen.
Sort of, so to speak, yeah. But yeah, it's just other way. They're not an apprentice, but they are influenced by the dark side.
Well, that's okay. But yeah, that's a nice little blank that fills in. Plagueis was probably alive during the Phantom Menace.
Yep, Plagueis was indeed alive during the Phantom Menace.
So that's a little fill in the blank. That's a little fill in the blank right there. But
Up to a point, though. Remember, it was up to a point. It was
Yeah.
It was up to when Palpatine became Chancellor, and then during that night, then he died.
that's interesting. That's really interesting. So it's like I have to wonder how much influence Plagueis had behind the scenes.
Well, he had major influence because it was him and Sidious that had come up with the idea of the clone army.
So Plagueis had a hand in that.
Yes, they both had they had the idea of basically, all right, Palpatine, because he was from Naboo, and he's actually was from a royal family of the time, or at least a noble family. When they die, he just became the lone survivor of that family. So, Palpatine did. He became a senator. So the idea they planned was, we'll start a war. We'll start this grand war. Alright, I need to get into power though. So we'll influence the war within the shadow, but I also need to be in play as a high-ranking, like senator or chancellor, basically. Because the idea that those two had in mind was basically Senator Palpatine would rule, as like the ruler, the supreme ruler of the Republic, while there's some influence, probably if Plague was still alive, with the Trade Federation.
That's that's a lot.
So basically, think of it as a game of Risk or a game of chess, but the two people controlling the pieces, the chess pieces, are on the same side.
That is something. It's a lot of lore right there.
Yeah, so the idea came from both of them saying, we'll create this grand war, and we'll rise to power, basically. Because the Jedi will have no choice to begin the war, which will cause a lot of cloudiness and,
It'll keep them distracted while we work behind the scenes.
Basically, yep.
So that definitely explains a lot more.
Which also explains a lot of how Sidious used that ability to hide in plain sight, basically, from the Jedi.
That is interesting. But it is also interesting, how Sidious, he really did enforce the rule of two throughout this whole story. It's like he didn't want anybody replacing him.
No, because he, just like some of the more powerful Sith Lords of the past, wanted to try, and his previous master try to figure out a way of immortality.
Oh yeah, definitely. But the only way he figured that out was through cloning.
That was his solution of cloning, which was Plagueis' idea. Was through cloning.
And at no point did Plagueis take a sample of his DNA and try to clone himself. Which honestly, if Snoke was a clone of Darth Plagueis, I would have liked that.
That would have been that would have been something. Although he just became more of a clone of Sidious.
Yeah, which is more underwhelming. But it's I don't know, Plagueis and Snoke, they kind of look similar. I would have accepted Snoke being a clone of Plagueis.
Yeah.
Like someone on Camino finds this old DNA cell, still preserved, still frozen, and then he's like, I wonder what happens if I play around with this. And he basically brings back a version of Plagueis that calls himself Snoke, but then the memories start flooding back in.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Well, if it did, then it would have played on the idea of then Snoke not only hunting down Luke because he was a Jedi, but hunting down Palpatine because he betrayed him.
Yeah, but then he finds out, my apprentice is dead. Oh well, at least I got one person to get revenge on now.
Yes.
I just would have preferred it if Snoke was actually Darth Plagueis, you know.
Yeah.
I would have preferred that instead of what we got, but that's another story.
Yeah. Or at least that's another thing to discuss later on. But anyway, so
Yeah.
back to the actual Phantom Menace at hand, basically. So they get the pod racing happened. They won.
Well, the pod race scene is actually one of the biggest highlights of this film, which people still talk about.
Yeah, it was. And also prior to the beginning of the pod racing too, since we're on the topic or going back to it, right before they get out there, they had another wager basically. Qui-Gon and the Toydarian had another wager basically because he put his bet on Saboba.
Yes, he did. And then Qui-Gon's like, I'm placing my bet. I want to free the boy so I can train him as a Jedi.
Well, he didn't say train as a Jedi, but at first he tried to use that idea, say, I wagered that on the boy and the mom. And Toydarian's like, no. Those two, they are not worth that for one pod race. No.
Yeah, and then Qui-Gon, does some more convincing, and then he's like, well, let's leave it to a game of chance.
Yes. The blue, the boy, the red, the mom.
Although, when I look at that cube closely, I think it was gonna land on red no matter what, because I saw a lot of the squares had red on them.
It was, but Qui-Gon used the Force as an influence a little bit.
Yeah.
On the blue.
There was only one square that had blue. I think the rest were all red.
Yeah, or at least one or two. Anyways, though, but it landed on blue, and that was actually due to the part of Qui-Gon using the Force a little bit, because without giving it away, but he's just kind of like a...
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how he does that, and you'd think that Watto would have a good eye, but he doesn't.
Nope, I think he was solely fixated on the dice, so he was able to get away with it. But then he was like, you won this small little chance, but you will not win the pod race. He got more anger towards the fact that it was the boy that was being wagered and not the mom.
Yeah, although you think he would have lifted his eyes just a little and said, I saw your hand move.
Yeah, but again, money, fixation, stuff like that. Anyways, so the bet was in, and also it was kind of like also talked about how now Anakin has not won a race. He never really finished.
Oh yeah, because Sebulba smashes up the pods.
Yep.
I remember reading that Sebulba knows where all the cameras are placed during these races.
Yep.
And that's how he's able to strike the other racers and win.
Yep. Although I think it does seem like, though, everyone kind of knows how dirty he plays. So it's not like, for them, especially in Tatooine, it wasn't too surprising, basically.
And then again, maybe because Sebulba had a lot of wins, he's got a lot of power and he can bribe people to hide what he does.
Yeah, basically.
That's probably the case.
But anyways, though, regardless of the point, then we get to the pod racing, which was for a theatrical thing. It probably was actually good for theaters.
Well, actually, I mean, it's a very fast and exhilarating and thrilling sequence.
Yeah.
Because we see how dangerous and fast this race is. And what's so cool about it is, there's no shake cam. It's all fast, but you can see what's happening. A lot of people did say it was a showcase of the special effects, and it was.
Yep.
But they're darn good special effects.
Yep, it was for the whole pod racing event, too. And again, too, it's kind of again, with the whole race car event thing, too. So you're kind of hearing going from one end to another end, basically. So you can kind of hear the sound effect going from, let's say, from the left all the way to the right.
Yeah, and the sound effects they have for how fast these pod races are, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's just so cool, and it's burned into my memory bank. So just of how good it is.
Yeah, and definitely having it in a theater definitely made it a lot better too.
Yeah, it made the scene more fast and exciting, and it just felt like you're just there for the thrill of the sport, the thrill of the race.
Yep.
It's amazing. And then there's some Tusken Raiders who are camping out, and they fire at everybody, and they're like,
Yep. And eventually the race draws down to two competitors, Anakin and Saboba.
And as they reach the finish line, you see two Jawas go, Houdini!
Houdini!
Which, by the way, they actually did a joke of that for Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. How it should have ended when they did their version of King of the Crystal Skull. Right as Jones gets into the fridge and the nuke throws him to the side, you see two prairie dogs go, Houdini! It's the exact same way.
Yeah, that would have been funny a little bit.
Yeah, so it's well, George, you inspired another creator to do something.
Yeah. And then, and after basically Saboba was the last to crash,
Yeah.
Anakin wins the race.
Yeah, so Boba gets his pod tied up with Anakin's, and then it falls apart. But his he goes, oh Buddha.
Yeah.
When he loses, it's you think he would have been more angry, but no, he's more annoyed than angry.
Yeah, it's Buddha.
Yeah, it's you would think this guy who has won so many races, I would have expected him to go, no, or he would I'll get you, Anakin.
But I think it was just more the fact that he won all these races. The one time he lost, and it was technically second place, is just shucks.
Yeah, but you would.
But he also got beat by his own shenanigans too.
Yeah, but you would think just because he's in second place, he couldn't tolerate something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just seems more like annoyance than anger to me.
Yeah.
It's I don't know. It's just he should have had a more angry reaction, but no, he's just annoyed. But then, there's other racers. Of course, they get their stuff destroyed.
Yeah, whatever that be, the guy that also at the beginning of the race could not get his engines going, and then it just blew up.
Yeah.
Or the one guy that parked to try to get his engines repaired, but instead one of the little droid repairmen went through the engine and destroyed it.
Yeah, and then it would have been kind of funny if an alien came out and said, insurance is not going to cover the damages here. And then the two racers are oh, come on, you said so you would help repair it in the contract.
Yeah.
And they're that's outdated. We have a new contract that says we can't help you with the damages. And then they're oh, screw this, I'm done.
Anyway, so Anakin won the race, so that means they got enough money for the parts, basically, or at least they have the right. And Qui-Gon frees Anakin.
Which, by the way, in case anybody asks how much money that was, the Lego game establishes it was 500.
500,000 or just
500.
Or just 500?
Yeah. I don't know how currency works in this universe, but it was 500.
All right, but anyways, though, it was enough money plus freeing Anakin, which toward the end he was no, you can't have the boy, you cheated, and it's do you want to discuss that with the Hutt?
And then it would have been kind of funny if Watto went, the Hutts? I can't afford another meeting with the Hutts. That would be totally uncool.
Or at least if that would have happened, I wonder if the Hutt would have been do you want anything more from this? Because I feel if he's going to complain more, you can have more to bargain for with this.
That too.
Which could have allowed, probably the mom to get freed as well. Because if the Hutt would have been you lost a bet and you're trying to backtrack now. Now you lose the boy. Whatever other slave that you have, it belongs to him now.
Yeah, that could have been a thing. And yeah, Jabba the Hutt does show up in this, but only for a brief amount of time.
And there was another Hutt too at the back as well.
Yeah, I forget what the name of that Hutt was, but
I think she was referenced in the Bounty Hunter game.
Yeah, and then of course you see Bib Fortuna, who was his right-hand man in Return of the Jedi.
Yep. And then Qui-Gon now he gets the parts back to the ship, goes back for Anakin, tells him that he's free. Unfortunately, the mom can't go along with them.
And this is what creates his internal feelings for his mother. He's I miss her, I love her, I want her to come with me.
Yeah, so that starts this whole descent to the dark side a little bit. Mm-hmm. The first step, fear.
And there was actually a deleted scene of episode 1 where Anakin was beating up on someone.
Yep.
And then you see a shadow, and it almost shapes into Lord Vader. There was a deleted scene of that.
Yeah, and finding out there were posters too. I've never seen some posters. You see of something similar, not at the beating up, but Anakin walking away. Then you go look at the shadow.
Yeah, you see Vader in the background.
Yep,
I remember that poster.
Yep, the shadows of Vader. Yep.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he doesn't want to leave his mom, and he has to emotionally say goodbye to her, which again, Lloyd's acting is a little off here.
Yeah, this is a little bit on the poutiness side. Instead of if you're gonna make a sad Anakin, you would not make it sound pouty. You would make it actually a little bit more sad.
Yeah, something like that. But actually, during this moment, we had a bit of a disturbance in our theater too.
Oh yeah, the one guy that got upset with the one person, right? Well, to us, the side of us, and then for the guy behind us, or at least behind to the right, in front of him, there was a guy on the phone.
Yeah, there was this guy on the phone, and then someone was like, "Hey, you want to turn your phone off?"
Yeah.
Which is not the worst thing we've experienced in a theater.
No, I mean, it was not, no. But I was like, I mean, I didn't realize there was someone on their phone until someone mentioned it, though.
Yeah, and like, what was he doing? Playing games? Texting somebody?
I think when I looked, because that was the only time I looked, it looked like he was either texting or looking up, like, scrolling through notifications.
Yeah, and it was really bright, and then someone told him, "Hey man, turn off the phone."
Well, again, like I said, I didn't realize that was happening until that guy mentioned it.
Yeah, because I was like too hyper-focused on the screen.
Yeah.
But yeah, little theater disturbance we've had, and I've had my fair share of theater disturbances.
Yep.
Kind of reminded me of the time I saw Alita Battle Angel, and there was this kid or something playing with an iPad or a phone.
Oh, yeah.
And then they came in and said, "Hey, keep that off. People are watching a film."
Yep.
And then you remember that incident when we saw Black Widow and those kids were being loud and rowdy?
Oh, yeah, a little bit of that, yep.
That's probably the worst experience we've had when it comes to audiences.
Yeah. But in the meantime, though, also during the whole sequence and leading up to back to the ship, Maul.
Yeah, Maul comes to Tatooine and he sends out some probes to go look for the people that he's looking for.
Recon droids, basically, which one came back and probably was like, they're on the outskirts.
Thank you. I will go after them now.
Yep, and then this is where we get to the scene of Anakin and Qui-Gon running back to the ship. And Anakin goes, "Wait, Master, my legs are tired." And it's like...
And then Qui-Gon's like, "Anakin, duck!"
Yep.
And then Maul gets into a fight, and he doesn't bring out both sides of the blade. He only has one side.
Yep, he brings out one, and then they start having like this, basically like 30-second duel, basically. But it was, it was only short because they had to escape.
Yeah, and then Obi-Wan's like, "We gotta go pick up Qui-Gon."
Well, because Anakin probably told him we gotta take off, and then just, be low about it. It's like, just take off, but keep low enough, and the thing open up long enough so that way, Qui-Gon can jump and they can escape.
Oh, yes. And then Qui-Gon's like, "I don't know who that was, but he was well trained in the ways of the Force."
Yep.
And then eventually we have the little introduction between Obi-Wan and Anakin, which doesn't last very long.
Nope. It's like, "Pleasure to meet you." And this was, Anakin trying to act like a Jedi, basically, even though this was like a 9-10-year-old boy trying to act, grown up. So in which case, it's like, okay.
Yeah. And eventually, they leave Tatooine and then they go to Coruscant. And of course, Anakin does have his interactions with Padme and how much he misses his mother.
Yep. And he also gives Padme the necklace, which will be shown a lot in
Episode 3.
Yep, 2. Well, I think 2 as well, but definitely 3 at the funeral.
Yeah, because I don't remember it showing up a lot in 2, but it did show up in 3.
Yeah, I know, 3 with the funeral with her holding on to that.
Yeah, and then Anakin, there was a scene earlier where he's like, "Remember when I gave you this?"
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and it's like that little thing, that little artifact. Gotta remember it.
Yep, and it was supposedly good fortune. Well, mostly until episode 3.
Yeah, it was good fortune up until the 3rd film when, she tried to convince him to come back, but then he force choked her.
Yep. But anyways, though, that's future films, though. We go on, though, back to Coruscant.
Where they start meeting up with Chancellor Valorum and other people.
And Senator Palpatine.
Oh, yep. And, of course, that's when Qui-Gon's telling them, "I gotta get to the Jedi Council. The situation's become a little more bigger than we think."
Yep, it's getting a lot more deeper than we think. And then that's when, the Queen Amidala and Senator Palpatine was discussing, basically, well, we'll have our meeting, but unfortunately this thing will fall short.
It will, because it takes a while. But hold on a sec. Just gotta check something quick.
So either 3 things will happen, as Senator Palpatine will say. 1, so either 3 things will have to happen. 1, you force basically a new election, which will be a lot more quicker, but, it'll just be more of a re-election in this case, rather than, having just try to settle it now. 2, you try to settle it now without the change of power, but it's not going to happen because they'll send in an investigation crew. And that will take time basically as well.
And there was another thing they said, it usually takes longer. I forget who it was.
The longest one was just basically them just discussing, basically, I believe. It was just a more like matter of talks, basically. Allowing the bureaucrats to get involved, basically, a lot more involved.
Yeah.
Which Palpatine, during the courtroom case, says that they're under the influence of the Trade Federation, which basically 2 out of the 3 scenario would have been in the favor of the Trade Federation.
Oh yeah.
And it was leaning towards basically the investigation, which basically is they sent an investigation to Naboo to see if there was any blockade or whatsoever.
And you actually had a decent explanation for why the entire Trade Federation fleet was not there.
Yes, because the beginning of the film, which I probably figured there were some people complaining about a little bit, where beginning of the film there was a huge blockade, but when you go back to Naboo, there's only one Trade Federation control ship circling around the planet.
And basically the Trade Federation guys were like, we need to get our ships out of here.
Because if you think about it this way, for those people who also share that same complaint about, well, how could there were a lot more ships and all of a sudden at the end of the film, or getting to the end of the film, there was only one? Investigation. Because if they were to send an investigation, even though it was, again, in the favors of the Trade Federation still, but let's just say they go through and investigate. What would have been more dastardly looking on the Trade Federation? Having a bunch of ships there that make it look like a blockade, or just one ship, which could have been anything.
That is the case. And then, they had only one ship there because they didn't want the whole fleet there, because that would create some discrepancies.
Yeah, because having a whole fleet there would have caused an uproar in Coruscant. Would have been like, looking at the Trade Federation like, what the heck? Why is there a fleet circling around Naboo?
Oh, definitely.
Versus one ship, which would have been, again, for any sort of purposes.
Yeah, and a lot of these political scenes when they're in the courtroom or the big Senate room, this is something a lot of people, again, did have issue with, because there's not a lot of people don't find the political stuff that interesting.
Which is also the other. I think, did we already mention this as the big issue? Was the like, is this 5 or? I know we mentioned it before, but in terms, did we already mention it in our listing?
I think I'm just trying to remember what we said back.
Because we said Jar Jar.
Yeah, Jar Jar. Then there was the continuity errors. There's Jake Lloyd. Politics was number 1, I believe.
Okay, politics. So it goes back to the first one, which was politics. Oh, yeah, that's right. It was political stuff, because that was the beginning of the film. Instead of like the whole action sequence went away, you have the negotiations.
Yeah, well, these scenes, I mean, I get why they're here. They're basically trying to, at least push the plot a little forward. The thing is, though, I just don't think Lucas made them interesting enough.
No, and the people complaining about the whole political stuff. Gotta keep in mind, people, this is not the Clone Wars yet. This is not the Clone Wars. That happens in Episode 2. Episode 1, we're heading into the back end, the ending of the High Republic era, which again was still in a manner of peace.
Yeah, and basically, I think this is the really big problem with this movie is, like, it's so small scale. Like, when you think Star Wars, you think there's a big galactic war going on.
Yeah, which take place from 4, 5, and 6, a war, basically.
Yeah, and then with the prequel trilogy, the war doesn't really begin until, like, the end of the Attack of the Clones.
Basically, that's when the whole start began. Because even in Episode 2, there wasn't really anything happening, per se. It was crescendoing, it was rising into a galactic war, but it was like that teetering moment, basically, where everything was getting heated a little bit in terms of political stuff. And then it broke out to war at the end of the Attack of the Clones.
Which is why I was discussing this with some other people sometime back, not too long ago actually, is like, if Attack of the Clones was the first prequel, and then like whatever the second movie could have been, like let's say the 2003 2D animated series was the second film. Like, Attack of the Clones, in retrospect, that could have been seen as, like, the start of the war.
Yep.
And people might have been forgiving of that. And then the 2003 series, if that was the second movie, like, that would have been a lot of fun, and we were in an actual war. And then the third one, the war is already going on.
Yep, or continuing, basically.
Yeah, and in the case of the Phantom Menace, it's like there's not really a war going on. It's like a small little issue that's like happening across the galaxy, and that's another problem I think people had with the Phantom Menace is that, you know, with the original trilogy, there's a war going on, but in this one, there's really no war going on, and the whole thing feels really small because of that.
It just became more of a trade dispute rather than a war. That is an issue. I will say that was an issue. However, though, it is sort of like a new, kind of like another look in terms of we don't have to always have a big war per se. Although, since it is the title name Star Wars, there has to be a war involved, basically. Whether that be Empire, Rebels, Republic, Droid Army, or if we go back to like even the older in terms of like expanded universe, Old Republic, Sith Empire, Jedi's, Sith, whatever the case may be. This was the matter of peace a little bit still, but you're still having a conflict though. A war, like a minor war, you could say. Which is basically Naboo versus the Trade Federation.
Minor war, like more like a proxy war or something?
Proxy war would be more of like let's just say like the Republic said some, like they weren't like majorly involved, but they were funding Naboo, basically ammunitions to fight off the Trade Federation.
Oh yeah, like they're not directly involved, they're just giving them the funds to fight back.
Yes. This is not the case. So think of it as kind of like how Israel is fighting off, some other, or I shouldn't even say.
Oh, I think we should be careful about mentioning that.
Yeah. I would say more maybe some older conflicts. Let's go back to let's actually go back to like the 1989 when the Afghan troops.
Oh yeah, when the Soviet was sending troops into Afghanistan.
Yep, I would say it's more of something like that where United States at the time were not directly involved, but they were funding the ammunitions to fight the Soviets.
Yeah, and the Soviets did not win the Afghanistan war that they were in.
Yep. So think of it as like that, basically, where the United States sent funding, but they were not involved.
Yeah, I mean, they could have done that. Maybe the Republic there were people who were funding Naboo to fight. But then again, Naboo is well equipped enough. They wouldn't need the funds.
Well, they were not. They were equipped to fight off a little bit, but not like they said. They couldn't fight off that army, basically.
Yeah, they couldn't fight off an army, but based on what we've seen in this movie, they seem to do pretty good. Especially with the Gungans. Again,
they were able to do decent enough when it came to ground scales and stuff like that. But they weren't able to get into the. They weren't. It was a losing. It was bound to be a losing fight out in space. Because, like I said, it was just starfighters. They couldn't break through the shields, basically.
Well,
with their lasers, with their guns.
Yeah, well, one of them did.
Only one person did, and that was because they flew to the hangar.
Oh yeah, but yeah, most of the political senator stuff. I mean, it's like I get why it's there. It's just not all that interesting. And I think that's something people didn't like.
Yeah, in terms of political stuff, it's only when they went back to Naboo, but also beforehand though. The Jedi Council, because...
Oh, before you get to that, I should point out with the Senate scene, E.T. makes an appearance in that scene.
He does, for like 2 seconds.
Yeah, his species, they show up in the Senate, which is a nice Easter egg because, Steven Spielberg and George Lucas, they're friends, and they shared resources with each other.
Yeah.
You also see a couple of Wookiees in the Senate.
Yep.
Which I'm like, okay.
So the planet of Kashyyyk gets a representation.
Yeah, and was there ever a Wookiee Jedi in any of the Star Wars media?
Yes, there has been some references, I believe, in some comic books. And I believe there was some, I think, maybe an Acolyte? Maybe there may be some.
I definitely would have wanted to have seen that in one of these movies.
Yeah. But yeah, anyways, though, regardless, though, now we go back to the Jedi Order, basically.
We get to see the Jedi Council, which many prequel fans will know the names of these Jedi quite well.
Yep, everyone knows Master Yoda, who is the Grand Master of the Jedi Order.
And then there's Mace Windu, who's played by Samuel L. Jackson.
Yep, we also see Ki-Adi-Mundi.
Yarl Poof, the guy with the long neck.
Oh, yep.
That Robot Chicken made a lot of skits out of.
There was Master Yaddle at the High Council, which later disappeared, and people questioned what happened to her. And then that was later told by the Tales of the Jedi.
of what happened to
Master.
Yaddle.
Yep, Master Yaddle.
And then there was the Jedi with like the things covering his eyes and the spiky face mask. Plo Koon, was it?
Oh yeah, Plo Koon. Yeah, the orange dude. Yep.
Yeah, which we don't see die until episode 3. And actually, when he died, that was actually kind of a big reveal to me because I remember there was a little Go-Gurt treat, those little yogurts that you squeeze out of the tube.
Oh yep.
He was on one of them with a blue lightsaber. I remember.
Yep.
I actually had that, and when I saw him die, in episode 3, I'm like, oh, that was him.
Yeah. And I think Kit Fisto was part of the High Council too.
Although I don't think we see him in this.
I don't know about this one, but he was seen in episode 3. Anyways, regardless though, you see the High Council. Qui-Gon mentions Darth Maul, but again, was it confirmed that he was a Sith Lord?
Because again, they're like, the Sith have been extinct for like, what, 2 generations or something?
He hinted at the idea, or suggested the idea that it was a Sith. They didn't believe so. Because again, they were gone for thousands of years. And then, they said they'll investigate into the matter more about this. And then Qui-Gon had a second thing. And this was about Anakin.
He basically mentions to the council that I have found a young individual who is very, very powerful in the Force.
Yep.
But there's a lot more to it than you think.
Yep, because he mentions that he has high midichlorian count. The boy is able to do a lot of things for his age. The council was skeptic.
You're referring to the one you're referring to the chosen one who's
Bring
prophesies
prophecies
to bring balance to the Force.
They were skeptic because again, it was a prophecy, and the fact that Qui-Gon, was talking about a boy, which they're like, huh, and then Anakin does go to the,
They take him to the council and they give him this little test where he has to guess the image.
Well, they do go through trials. Which one of them was to guess the image, and he passed. He passed a lot of them, but he is not granted the right of passage to a Jedi because
they know that he's got a lot of fear for his mother. Fear is the path to the dark side.
Which grants the idea of not giving him the rights of being a Jedi because he's too old. Because he's too old because of the fact that he was separated from his mom. He knows of his mom. Where back then, for a Jedi, if they were to uncover, if they were really strong in the Force, they would have taken him away at like the age of like babyhood, basically. We're talking like either when they were born or 1, 2, or 3. Basically around the age where they wouldn't recognize, they wouldn't know their parents.
Yeah, and it's like, he doesn't, I don't know, it's like when Yoda in episode 5 tells Luke he is too old to begin the training. That makes sense, but with Anakin here, he's like 9. And then we see younglings in the later movies that look,
that look younger.
7 or 8.
Yeah, a little bit younger. But again, the Jedi were brought up on the idea, or just basically taking kids, training them without their parents, basically, involvement, basically. So that way, they have no emotional connection whatsoever. They can just bring about them as like sort of like a monk, basically.
Oh, that is interesting. But yeah, they say he's too old to begin the training, and I'm like, oh no, he doesn't look that old to me.
Yeah, the idea is just because of the fact that if you're old enough, if we take you in and you still know your parents, like in an emotional standard, they cannot do that because they fear of you going into the dark side.
Oh yeah, but they also say a line where they're like, clouded this boy's future is.
Yep.
It's like they can see something, but it's so clouded they can't make it out.
Yeah, because since he has so much potential, plus, as the audience, we know what he turns out to be.
Oh yeah. Imagine if there was a Jedi though who was not clouded and he was able to see what Anakin becomes, and then he's like, I gotta take care of this problem right now.
And it's like, nope, you cannot see that.
No, he's gonna be bad. We gotta take out the problem now.
He will not be the problem.
Okay. But that would have been kind of interesting. Maybe if someone did that as a joke, like a nice skit,
That would have been something funny.
Because you know how in Last Jedi, and why am I using that as a reference point? But basically, Luke, he sees this darkness in Kylo Ren, and he tries to take him out. Like, imagine if someone tried to do that to Anakin, and Anakin turned to the dark side a lot quicker.
Yeah. Although, again, Luke in that film, he felt shame because he did it so soon.
Yeah, but that's another story.
That's another, although, again, that's a lot of problem with the sequels, though. More so on episode 8 and 9 than anything else.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, so with Anakin, they know this boy's future is clouded. They're just unsure if they want to train him. And Qui-Gon, he sticks up for the kid, says that I'll train him, I'll make him my apprentice. And they're like, you already have one.
Yeah, if you already have one, well, then I'll let him go through the trial and he can become a knight. In which case, I will have a need of apprentice. Therefore, problem solved.
But the council is like, we're still not sure.
Still not sure. We're still not sure. In the meantime, though, the queen is heading back to the boo. We gotta take care of, you gotta,
Take care of that problem first, then we can continue this matter.
Yep, basically.
And it's actually kind of interesting now how, like, Samuel Jackson, he's in a lot of stuff. He's in this movie very little as Mace Windu.
Yes, a little bit. But in the meantime, though, they do go back to the boo.
Yeah, they go back, and then they go to the Gungans who have fled their underwater city.
Yep. And they're preparing for something else. Probably like an eventual conflict with the droid army.
Oh, yeah.
But they decide to team up with the people of Theed, basically.
And this is where Natalie Portman reveals herself as the real Amidala. The other one was just a decoy.
Yep. Because she's trying to play the whole, the double, basically, bodyguard, basically, because, I can't play the queen alone. I have to figure out a way, just in case if they bring you in, I can still have the ability to do other things to save, basically,
Yep. And also because she wants to protect herself, because she knows she's got a big red target on her.
Yeah, that's another thing, too. She knows, from the Trade Federation's eyes, because I think she knew that there's a big red dot right on her head from the Trade Federation standpoint. Whatever she did prior to the prequels, she had a dot, and it just grew bigger and bigger.
Oh yeah, and we see that play out in the rest of Attack of the Clones, but Revenge of the Sith they completely dropped that. Although I think the TV series had more of that.
I think the TV series did a little bit more, but yeah, it was a red dot. When we know that in episode 1, it grew a lot bigger in episode 2.
Oh yeah. And actually, little thing I wanted to point out about the decoy of Amidala.
Yep.
That decoy was played by Keira Knightley, if you know who she is.
I'm trying to remember.
Elizabeth Swann in Pirates.
Oh.
That's her.
Interesting. Elizabeth Swann, the decoy for...
Padme.
Oh
yeah, played by Keira Knightley.
Mm.
If you didn't know that when you were younger and stuff, totally understandable.
Yeah.
Because, Keira Knightley was in stuff before she got it big with Elizabeth Swann.
Yep.
And I think Keira Knightley is a Star Wars fan, from what I remember.
Yeah.
But anyway, so they make their, peace treaty with the Gungans, and the Gungans are like, you think you know better than us? We like this. Let's be friends.
Oh, yeah, no, because, like is established in the beginning of the film, they thought that the people of Theed were arrogant. She shows that they were wrong, and that was in the liking of the king. So he's like, yep, we'll be friends, and we'll team up. Which they brought up this grand plan to basically recapture, Naboo.
In which case the Gungans will draw out all the forces to the plains.
Yep, to the playing field, so that will be one battlefield. So that's one battlefield. The second battlefield will be within the city.
And then there will be a space battle. Let's take out the control ship.
Yep, so that's the third one, which is, the space battle. And that one, as Obi-Wan or Qui-Gon mentioned, that was going to be a lot more of a that's the losing side of it, was the space battle. And you could probably figure it that way. Because Starfighter's going up against a giant control ship, which has shields probably active, or up and ready, with basically turbo lasers, and a bunch of droid starfighters inside the hangar.
Oh yeah. They didn't really send up a lot of fighters. They only sent up what they could.
They sent out a good amount, though, for what they had, though.
Yeah, that's true. Although Anakin was the one that, flew in, and he basically blew it up from the inside.
Yeah, but I think some people, well, again, he's a really skilled pilot, but I think some people probably view it as lucky, basically.
Yeah, probably. I mean, you can excuse it as, oh, he's just that good of a pilot, but he got very lucky.
Yeah, he did get lucky, that's for sure.
And actually, him blowing up the thing from the inside and then it explodes.
Yep.
That's exactly what happens with the second Death Star in Return of the Jedi.
Oh yeah, the blowing up the 2 reactors and then it collapsed down.
Yeah, that's the same thing happens here, just not as big of an explosion.
No, but it does gradually get to a bigger explosion. Though it's not like whoopoosh. It was like a boom, 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 boom.
Yeah. And actually, because there's like a lot of different battles happening at the same time, and this was another complaint that I think people had is which battle should we care about the most?
Well, because it was referenced to 3, and then it came to the 4th one, which was
The Jedi's versus Darth Maul.
Yep, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan versus Maul.
Which admittedly is a bit of a fun fight to watch.
Yep, I think everyone liked that battle. I think in terms of the 4 battles that was happening, basically, because you have the battle in the plains, the battle in the city, the battle in space, and then the lightsaber duel.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know if this movie started it, but it kind of started a template where movies would have like, different things going on, different battles.
A different battle, or just like this grand battle, but we're going to like different parts of the fight, basically.
Yeah, and there's like 3 examples I can think of that have done this.
You could say, wouldn't Endgame be part of it? Because I know you mentioned other films.
Endgame doesn't count because it's focusing on one singular battle. I think you're thinking Infinity War. Infinity War, you have the battle in Wakanda, and then you got the battle on Titan.
Yeah, but that was like 2 battles, though. I'm thinking like you're going to like different sections of the fight, basically.
Let me think. The Mummy Returns. In The Mummy Returns, the characters are fighting the Scorpion King and Imhotep in a pyramid.
Yep.
And then you got the Magi fighting the army of Anubis.
Yeah.
And it's cutting back and forth between those fights.
Yeah.
Only in this case, those fights we actually care about the good guys winning.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to see the bad guys win. And
Yeah.
then Van Helsing did this too, where it was like cutting back between different battles.
Yeah.
Like the end fight, they have Kate Beckinsale and David Wenham. They're taking on the remaining vampire minions of Dracula.
Yeah.
And then another one was Return of the King, where you have the characters fighting the forces of Mordor, and then Frodo's got to go destroy the One Ring and Mount Doom.
Yep.
I don't know if the Phantom Menace started it, but basically that's kind of the template for most of these climaxes. Like we have different battles, different things going on.
Yeah.
And it's like we have so much going on. But with the one in Phantom Menace, I think the complaint was which one should we really care about the most?
Yeah.
Because people didn't like Jar Jar that much. And then, of course, you have Anakin's deal, but people didn't really like the way he was characterized.
Yeah, because Anakin was on in space, Padme and the Royal Guards were in the city, Jar Jar in the plains, and then Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon against Darth Maul.
Yep. And I think this is where a lot of the major complaints come in, is like, people feel like with this movie, they don't have a big enough attachment to the characters. And because of that, they're just trying to figure out who should we really care for.
I would say, and now we put this up, let's just put this up as a how much they care. I think number 1, we could probably start this off easily. It's definitely Qui-Gon Obi-Wan versus Darth Maul. 1, we all know who Obi-Wan is, especially from episode 4 and 5 and 6.
Mm-hmm.
So you know how that's gonna, you know he's gonna stay alive. It's just more of the fact that what happened to Qui-Gon Qui-Gon? What about Darth Maul? So that, that's probably the major plot point. Plus, it's a lightsaber duel. It's Jedi versus Sith. Who wouldn't want to see that?
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to the second one, and this is where you can kind of get sketchy between 2 through 4. What do you think should be the second one then?
Second one. Probably Amidala and the Royal Guard.
Reason being,
Basically, their objective is just as important as the Jedi's is. They need to get in there and retake the palace, get it out of the Trade Federation's control.
yeah, I would probably argue the space. I was actually, even though this is a losing battle, I keep saying, but probably the second one, because you are eyeing Anakin Skywalker.
I mean, it didn't really come off as a losing fight to me. Yeah, they had to fight the droid ships that were coming out of the control ship.
Yeah,
But it didn't. But I don't think the way they shot that scene, it didn't really come off as a losing fight. They were holding it on their own, and then Anakin flies in.
they were holding up on their own. But again, if it wasn't for Anakin though being there, How much of a success rate you would have viewed that, though, for the Trade Federation?
Oh, they would have won that little fight easily.
That's what I'm saying. It was because of Anakin. So I'm thinking, because of Anakin's influence there, and how much we know how Anakin turns to the Darth Vader, we want to know how good of a pilot he is. I kind of viewed that as the second. And then the third being the battle of inside the city with Padme trying to get to the control room and trying to basically get the Viceroys to sign a new treaty.
Okay. And then you got the Gungan fight, which will probably come last.
That is last on my book, and that maybe, I'm not too sure if you agree with me or not, but I kind of viewed that as last just because the audience then, and I think the audience now, don't really care much about Jar Jar.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that fight, maybe there's a little cool stuff to it.
There are some cool stuff to it. You have the giant shield. You have basically a droid army firing guns, while the other ones have shields and throwing grenades.
Oh, yeah. But only when Jar Jar does his antics, that breaks the scene a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. Although some of his antics does cause collateral damage to the droid army.
That is true, especially when he gets the giant energy ball into one of their ships and it basically short circuits the ship.
Yeah. Or you have, like, using the broken parts of a battle droid and be able to shoot the gun, having the droid instinctively shoot the gun.
Oh, yeah. And I think if I were to rank all four of these battles, I'd keep the Jedi battle at number 1.
Yep.
I'd keep Amidala and her Royal Guards at number 2 because their objective is just as important as the Jedi's is.
Yep.
The Gungans would be last, and then Anakin, again, would be number 3 because that space battle, I mean, it's there.
Yep.
It's just mostly kind of a side thing when the real objective is retaking it on the ground.
True, but I view it as number 2 because another thing is this. Even if, let's say, you almost failed to get to the Viceroys a little bit, or let's say you do get captured, the fact that Anakin blows up, because when Anakin blows up that space station, the entire droid army shuts down.
Oh, yeah.
So think of it this way. Even let's say that second objective was a failure, and they got captured, that would have turned out to be successful because Anakin blowing up the ship, which caused a lot of droids to go down.
That is a good argument, but maybe if they captured the Viceroys first, then they could have sent whoever they had up there, and then they're blow it up while we hold the Viceroys captive.
Or I think what you're probably thinking more likely would have been the scenario was they communicated back up to the control ship saying surrender. Basically, we have no choice to surrender because if we don't, they'll kill us.
That too.
I think that's why I think 2 and 3 in our books is probably a little bit different. We can agree on 1 and 4. It's just that you view as the capturing, which is still important, don't get me wrong. Capturing the Viceroy will be a lot more critical. Where I view as, if you blow up the space station, then the Viceroy capturing will be a lot more easier.
Yeah.
Because without the droids, they're panicking.
Yeah, that is the case. That is the case. I mean, you have a good argument for it. There's other ways to look at it, but yeah, so much going on in that scene.
Yeah. And they also describe, too, in the plains, that's also another losing battle.
Mm. Yeah, because the Gungans, they do put up their best.
They put up their best, but as we saw in the film, it is a losing battle. They destroy their shields, and then they start to flee.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and it's, I'm trying to also figure out, again, no, I did figure this out. The Jedi fight is the most exciting. The space battle, it happens. There's little cool, exciting stuff in there. Gungan's got that too. The palace retaking, there's maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, so much going on in that
There was
scene.
so much going on, and also with the lightsaber duel, that was also the most important part because that duel was also titled basically as the song that's most popularized, Duel of the Fates.
Oh yeah, that is one of John Williams' best composers for Star Wars. He's got a lot.
Yeah.
And I will say this, the music of this film, it's really well done.
Yes.
But John Williams knocks it out of the park most of the time.
Yep. And I believe Filoni also calls that fight, that lightsaber battle, literally the Duel of the Fates as well, because it is the fate of Anakin Skywalker.
And how the path he's going to go down.
Yep. Because if Qui-Gon lives, Qui-Gon represents the father figure.
Oh, yes.
But if he doesn't, as we see, it becomes more in the hand of Palpatine as the father figure.
Although, really, I mean, some audiences could have seen this back then, that we know that Obi-Wan was the master of Anakin Skywalker. They say this in the original trilogy, so it's like, you know where this is going to go.
Yes, you know what this is going to go. That is for sure. That is for sure. But it's like the idea. It's like the back mind, the process. You could think of it as like had Qui-Gon been alive, this whole galactic civil war could have been prevented. It's that idea, because of this whole civil war, we saw what happened, basically. And it's just because his death happened, Anakin loses that one particular father figure that would have kept him on the light side. Where now this other father figure comes in and tries to influence him for more dark side behavior.
Oh, yeah. That is a good explanation. And maybe in a what-if scenario, Qui-Gon lives.
Yep, I know some people have talked about what if, scenario that Qui-Gon lives. I know there's a bunch of them on YouTube.
And then there was one scene in the 2003 2D series where Qui-Gon takes young Anakin to Dagobah in the dark side cave.
Yep, and he does the exact same quote from Episode 5.
That place, it's strong with the dark side of the Force. A domain of evil it is, and you must go.
Yeah.
What's in there?
Only what you take with you. That was the only thing that was repeated. What's in, only what you take with you. It's like, what's in there? Only what you take with you.
Yeah, and that cave has always been one of the most interesting places for me in this entire franchise. Because the more I looked into it, the lore behind it, turns out there was I think it was a Dark Lord or a Sith who died in that cave, and his energy basically became attached to the place.
Which kind of makes sense, just because of how it seems like how strong of a dark side presence it's in Dagobah. Especially when it's shown in Episode 5. It seems like that way in the 2D film and the 2D
series.
The series, that it has some dark side influences. So it's kind of interesting to see how Dagobah, for a swamp-like area that it is, has somewhat of a dark side influence.
Yes, and that's because of the history of that cave. It's really fascinating. I recommend people look into it because it's a really interesting read.
Yep. So then, basically the whole battle sequence of Naboo happened because, Qui-Gon dying, basically, in the duel.
Oh, actually, before we get to that, they have the shields come up, and they have to wait till the shields go down. At no point do they ever consider, that you see the two lights, and those rectangular box things. At no point are they like stab and it disables the shields. They could have done that, and Obi-Wan could have gotten to him much quicker.
Probably, but I think they both probably wanted somewhat of a break.
Probably. Maybe that's that could be.
Because I would imagine a little bit too. Even if you're fighting to the death a little bit, imagine at some point you're like, "Time out," and you're both like, "Let's have a little short break."
Yeah, and maybe there could have been a line from Darth Maul where he goes, "All right then, I'll bide my time."
Yeah, and they're both sort of meditating in their own aspect.
Well, Maul's walking back and forth. He's not really meditating.
But it's his version of it. It's meditating through anger, basically, trying to get himself pumped up, basically. While Qui-Gon, since he's on the Jedi a little bit more, he's just quietly meditating, just sitting there, going through his thoughts. While Maul, in his thoughts,
oh yeah,
it's like, I will get you.
And then of course the shields come down.
Yeah, Qui-Gon's like, you're just a thought for now. And then when the shield goes up, then we fight.
Mm-hmm.
But in the meantime, I will dwell on my thoughts.
And I'll bet that's something inspired by samurai culture.
Yeah.
Definitely. And so the shields go down, and of course they're continuing their fight.
Yeah. And Obi-Wan was also sort of like that. As a Padawan, he was also like, all right, I'll get there. I'll help out my master. We'll defeat this Sith, and then we'll...
And at no point when the shields go down does he use the force speed, like you mentioned.
That's another thing, and I think other people have this sort of issue too, because you use the force speed to get away from the droidicas from the start of the film. Why wasn't that brought up when all the Wraith shields, were brought down for those 5 seconds? Speed your way through. You would have caught up to Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon and Maul for that fight.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why he didn't use it, but or maybe was he ever trained in that?
Both of them. I mean, they used it, so they were trained.
But it's like maybe he didn't think of it.
Probably didn't think of it because probably either didn't think of it, or you could probably use the excuse of there's a giant pit right there. What if he overshoots it and it falls to the pit?
Yeah. And of course, when the shields go down, Qui-Gon and Maul continue fighting, and this little scene actually, Qui-Gon's death. I need to talk about this scene a little bit.
Oh yeah, where also the music just kind of goes away.
Yeah, basically, I could not handle this death at a young age. I could not. Like when Maul hits him with the saber and then stabs him.
Oh yeah.
And then Obi-Wan goes, no! I couldn't handle that. Young me could not handle that scene. I literally ran out of the room when that scene first came on.
Really?
And anytime the movie came on, I hid from that scene because I couldn't handle it.
Couldn't handle the death of Qui-Gon, or
It was Obi-Wan's no mixed with the death. It came off as really realistic. Young me could not handle something like that. There was another Star Wars scene. The scene in Return of the Jedi when Luke is getting electrocuted by the Emperor.
Oh yeah.
Could not handle that scene as a young kid.
Oof.
I really could not.
Yeah. And then that's where you kind of see the losing. Almost feels like the loss basically kind of dwindling down a little bit, where Qui-Gon died. The playing field was lost. Padme was captured, basically.
And Anakin's ship shut down in the control ship, and it seemed like all was lost.
Until a few flickers happened, basically. One, the flicker at where the double agent.
Yeah, the decoy comes in, and the Vicer's like, get her! This one is a decoy!
And they got double play by the double play.
Oh, yeah. And then the shield shut down, and Obi-Wan gets out there, and he's fighting against Darth Maul, and he's doing really well.
Yep, and it was actually, in terms of the production-wise, I think it was a one-shot because of how fast-paced and how really on point they were.
They were trained in a lot of choreograph, so they must have rehearsed a bit.
But I think it was just one shot though, because it was well done at the time.
Oh, yeah.
The fight. I think it was just a one-shot sequence.
Oh, it could have been. But they were really well trained. They probably did more than one take. I would have to look into behind the scenes.
Yeah.
But during the fight, Obi-Wan cuts the double blade in half.
Yep.
And minor complaint here. At no point does Maul think to have both blades in two hands. And he's like, you have no idea what you have just done. And then he uses both. Yeah,
but I think because of the fact that it got cut and then the one got burnt to the side, so it now became one.
Okay, that's probably the explanation why. But he could have done a dual wielding with blades in both hands.
Could have, it felt like it, but then I think the other one that got cut in half fell to the side and got burnt up basically, or blown up basically, as you kind of saw with the little fire explosion and
Oh yeah. And then during the fight, and I know this is something that happens in the Clone Wars, but at no point does Darth Maul try to tempt Obi-Wan to take him out using dark side abilities. Because I remember in the Clone Wars episodes, Darth Maul taunts him with Qui-Gon's death, and then you see Obi-Wan gets mad, and then he's getting aggressive.
Yep.
And yeah, he's getting aggressive here, but you would think, at least at some point or another, Maul would have been like, strike me down, Obi-Wan, strike me down, give in to your hate and anger.
Yeah, but he was not in the stance of I should say a Sith Lord per se. He was more being taught as an assassin, so he couldn't say something like that quite yet. It was the silent assassin still.
Yeah, that's...
Hence the title, a little bit, part of the title. Although really the Phantom Menace was more towards Emperor Palpatine.
Yeah, it's more towards Palpatine than it is Maul. I mean, Maul plays his part, but it's mostly Palpatine.
Yeah, but a silent assassin still for the Emperor.
Yeah, and then, of course, Maul gains the upper hand and, gets him over into the hole, and then Obi-Wan's, dangling for life on this little thing, and then Maul kicks his lightsaber down the pit.
Yep.
But I kind of would have liked it if Maul picked up the saber and used the Force to crush it.
Yeah.
That would have been far more intimidating.
Probably, but I think it was just more the victory that he had imposed a little bit, kicking the lightsaber down, because it's and you have no, it's over, Obi-Wan. I have the high ground.
Yeah, he's got the high ground. He's swinging his saber around.
But before that, though, we go to the second biggest victory, which was Anakin getting the ship back up, shields on,
He gets it back on, fires some missiles at one of the power cores.
Well, he fires some shots, just some gunshots at the droids. Then he fires those missiles just out of whim, basically, thinking he can hit some droids. It hits a main reactor core.
Oh yeah, and then the ship starts blowing up, and all the droids are like, "The ship's blowing up! Run!"
It's like, we're losing power. We've been hit at the main reactor core. Impossible. Nothing can get through our shields.
Well, clearly someone did.
Well, it's like, yeah. Well, and it's like,
and if they're like, nothing can get through our shields, like, do you have no computer that can like track the ships that are flying in?
yeah, or like the fact that it's like, or could you not put into consideration that one of the Naboo Starfighter flowing in?
Yeah, don't you have a signal that helps you identify the Naboo starfighters from your own?
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, Anakin, gets the engine going and starts to, fly out of this, the hangar basically, and then everything starts blowing up from the inside. As one of the Starfighter says, "What's happening?"
That's one of our guys. He blew it up on the inside.
Or it's like, "What's happening? It's blowing up from the inside." We didn't hit it.
Well, someone did.
And then, of course, one of the other cringy lines that people complain about in the film. Now, this is pod racing.
Oh yeah, which I think Anakin should have said something else like, "This is what's a good line that could have been done?"
This is better than pod racing.
Yeah, that would have worked better.
Yeah.
Because him saying this is just like pod racing, I'm like, no, it isn't. This is completely different.
Yeah, it's like, this is better than pod racing. It's like, that would have been a little bit more funnier because it would have been like, a lot more dangerous. What the heck are you talking about?
I mean, yeah, and you could have a debate on which is more dangerous, pod racing or fighting in a star fleet.
Yeah, I know. That would have been quite the debate right there.
I'm pretty sure some people debated, but yeah.
And if you want to continue that debate too, if there is one, you could debate it down in the comments section. Which is more deadlier, pod racing or fighting in a space battle?
Whatever they decide to do, but yeah, honestly, I've never really thought about that line too much, but apparently people think it's really cringe. I can think of much worse in these movies.
True. I honestly, I think the episode 2 line from Anakin was probably a lot more cringier.
I don't like sand.
Yep.
That to me, yeah, I can see where people are coming from, but the worst line in all of Star Wars for me is somehow Palpatine returned.
That is,
Yeah.
Somehow Palpatine returns.
Yeah, in retrospect, that line, basically, it symbolizes that we don't have any ideas, we're just going to recycle a villain we already did.
Yeah, it's like somehow Palpatine return. That literally could have been like the silly, presented the script.
Yeah.
Somehow Palpatine returns?
Yeah.
Yep, somehow Palpatine returns. How? I don't know.
Yeah, but in retrospect, now this is pod racing. I mean, there's always going to be much worse lines.
And then, look, one of ours, out of the main hole.
Yeah.
And then that, woo!
Oh, yeah, that was cringe. But then back to Obi-Wan and Maul. So, yeah, Maul's swinging the saber around, and at no point does he go, "It's over, Jedi. I have the high ground."
Yeah. But it's not a meme quite, though. Oh, well, it eventually became later in the meme, which they did use this scene as a meme again for that high ground meme.
I think I may have seen a parody where Maul actually cuts Obi-Wan as he goes up.
Yeah.
I can't remember where it was, but I'm pretty sure it exists.
But Obi-Wan was able to kind of like, get a hole in the lightsaber a little bit with the Force, jumps over Maul.
And then cuts him in half, and he's like, "Ooh!"
Yep, cuts him in half, and it's just like, where, 1999, everyone thought he died.
Yep, everybody thought he died, but nope, he's alive.
And it only took about over a decade later to have at least Filoni be like, he's alive still.
Yeah, but you would think a cut like that would easily kill him. Like, he'd lose a ton of internal organs, there'd be a lot of blood loss. But as you said...
I mentioned this with, like, during our lunch, where it's just like, because of how hot, or how, like heat-wise, a lightsaber is, it can instantly, carbon up, basically.
Cauterize the wound.
Yeah. So it's like, you already, like, if there's, like, a little, like, a little injury right there, you could just zap, tap it, it will burn really fast. Don't get me wrong, but it'll, like, it'll stabilize it basically because of its intense heat.
Yeah, I guess so. But at no point does, like, I would have kind of liked a joke somewhere in a meme where someone's like, they took my kidneys. Like Darth Maul's like, they took my kidneys. I want my kidneys back.
Yeah,
But they could make a short where Darth Maul goes on a quest to get his kidneys back.
But on the other hand, though, I would say this though, it will still cause a lot of internal bleeding, which would cause death, though.
Oh yeah.
Because again, you are getting cut in half.
Yeah, and I don't think he could have survived a fall like that. Because he's fallen from such a great height. I don't remember where that hole goes, but it's such a great height.
Yeah, so you would imagine, like, because he's falling down, yes, he's hitting a few things too, but it's like he's falling down such great height. You would have think like his body or like a back still would have damaged it enough to where he died. No.
And then when
he was so enraged by the loss that he used that anger to get out of there, somehow gets on a friggin' remote planet, get some robotic parts as well, like spider legs, along the way, and survive off of basically madness, berserk rage.
Yeah, because he was like mad and stuff. I remember from the episode, he wasn't quite right in the head, and they had to get those witch sisters to cure him a bit.
Yeah, trying to stabilize him, basically, like mentally stabilize him.
Yeah, but hang on a sec, everybody. Yeah, like you said, the witches were trying to stabilize him and get him back into a healthy sanity state.
Because, yeah, he was just in a blind berserk rage.
Yeah, but I would think the laws of physics would say from falling that great of a height, like the second you hit the ground, or before you hit the ground, you're already dead.
Yeah, or just because of the fact you are hitting multiple things on the way down at that speed would cause a lot of stuff to break.
Definitely, like his spine could have been broken, his brain could have been broken from all that head damage.
Or the neck, or whatever.
Yeah.
The back, the neck, whichever the case may be. It could have broke it.
Yeah, but no, he's alive and well in the later stuff that we see of him.
Well, to a degree, because he used that blind rage to fuel them to keep going. Eventually, again, get some spider legs, and then because he was still in rage, blind rage, he gone to a berserk and later was on a remote planet.
And then his brother Savage Opress finds him, gets into the sisters, they restore him, and then he's back to the guy we knew him as.
Yep. But before all that, as he's falling down and all that sort of stuff, Obi-Wan goes to Qui-Gon.
Who's dying because he was stabbed in the heart. It looked like he was stabbed in the heart.
He was stabbed, like, right here. Maybe in the lower half or something like that. It was, like, somewhere around right here. It was, like, lower than the heart. But either way, he's the only Force or person in Star Wars history, in terms of a theatrical or any showcasing, where he dies by a stab. Where every other person we have seen, when they get stabbed, they somehow eventually live.
Oh yeah, because they never stab the critical components of the human body.
It's only with Qui-Gon, where I know one particular person make this joke, more than a few times. Every other person gets stabbed, they live. Only Qui-Gon gets stabbed, dies.
Well, that's because he got stabbed in the chest around the heart area. He didn't get stabbed in the kidney or anything.
I'm just saying, it's like there's some other characters that get stabbed, but they live. It's like, make it make sense. Why? It's like you're making just the Qui-Gon death a lot more.
Or if they could, I know some people have lost their arms and other types of decapitations.
Yeah.
Decapitations. Were there any No. Probably lost their limbs. I don't remember if there was a decapitation, but that would be too dark.
In the Phantom Menace, or
in any Star Wars media, was there a decapitation ever?
Yes, Episode 3.
Which one was that? Which death was that?
Do you need a big hint?
Yeah.
Give me your other lightsaber.
Oh wait, Dooku. Yes, I remember now.
Yes, that.
I was trying to think like what other Star Wars media was there a decapitation?
Yeah, Dooku was the decapitation. Kill him. No.
I apologize if I forgot that a bit, but sometimes I gotta rewatch stuff to remember a thing or two. But anyway, that's kind of interesting that you bring up. Qui-Gon's the only one that gets stabbed in the chest and nobody else does.
Yeah, right. He gets stabbed.
Oh wait, another decapitation I remember. Jango Fett.
Oh yeah,
Did I not remember that?
Oh yeah, another one where literally base was sliced I did with the reverse script. But yeah, just slice and then he falls and dies.
Oh yeah. Yeah, okay, maybe my knowledge of who dies and how they die is not up to date.
So Jango Fett dies of decapitation. Dooku dies of decapitation.
Yeah, I don't know why I forget stuff like that, but it's these tiny little details, you gotta remember them sometimes. Always good to refresh.
Yep.
But anyway, yeah, Qui-Gon dies, and then he tells Obi-Wan, he is the chosen one. You must train him.
You must train him. As his dying wish, and Obi-Wan says yes. And a lot of times, in any sort of things ever, you always grant the person's last dying wish.
Yep, it's part of the respect and honor.
Yep, part of the respect and honor. And in this case, Obi-Wan trains Anakin.
And we all see how that goes in the later films and the television stuff.
And how how Palpatine with the Anakin, we will watch your career with great interest.
Oh yes, and we're gonna have plenty of benefits that come with it.
Yeah.
There's no 401k package, but we got plenty of good benefits.
Health insurance may be questionable, but you'll still be alive.
And what about the dental insurance? Oh, actually, we never thought of that. Seriously, like, does Anakin get his teeth cleaned at all?
He got burnt up to entire crisp.
I'm pretty sure he's still got teeth. They gotta, like, do some dental cleaning, but it must be painful where he's like, "Gee!" Or maybe he uses the Force to keep the cavities at bay.
Yeah, or something like that. Anyways, though, but it's like health insurance wise, it's questionable, but you'll be alive still.
What about the vision insurance? I don't think that's part of the plan, but we can add it.
Yeah, that's not part of the plan, but we can add it to help that.
What about accidental dismemberment insurance?
I think that's part of that questionable health insurance.
Yes. No dental insurance? Then again, we didn't think too hard about adding that. And then, what's another one? What about child insurance, child support, and all that? That's not in the plan either.
No, somewhere they have to just obey the Empire. As long as you are cooperating with the Empire rule, we will treat them with we'll treat them with the utmost respect, to a degree.
Okay. But yeah, that is interesting when he says that we'll watch your career with great interest.
Yep.
And yeah, the Trade Federation, they basically are defeated and they walk away going, oh.
Yeah, they're basically, with their rear ends up and they're like, running away, scattering.
Yeah, but at no point, like, someone could put this in as a joke for a skit where the Viceroy's like, I'll get you, Naboo people! Or I'll get you, Republic!
I think not so much the Republic, because again, they were not heavily involved with the Battle of Naboo.
Yeah, but it's like the Viceroy read ahead of the later movies, and he's like, "We'll get you for this."
I think they kind of went more for Padme. That's why they have a bigger target on her head.
Oh yeah. I mean, maybe someone does have a skit for that. I don't know.
Yeah. Either that, they just have a dartboard of Padme, and they're just like.
Yeah, that's one target. Who's the other targets on the list?
I think it's just her because of what happened in Naboo.
Really? That's the only target we got? We need another one once she's taken out. Otherwise, we're gonna get bored.
Do you really want to go after Sidious?
Not going after him. He helps us out the most.
Well, remember how they were complaining to Dooku about how Sidious did not treat him well in Episode 2?
Which scene was that again?
That was during Dooku's talk with the Viceroys and the rest of the Trade Federations.
Oh, I don't think they were complaining about Sidious. They were just talking about their plan.
They were, but I think they mentioned how Sidious, they're like, oh, thank God we're talking with you this time, and not, because Sidious, I remember they had some complaints about Sidious, and that they were a lot more happier working with Dooku.
I think, Dooku mentions he was betrayed 10 years ago by the Dark Lord and came to me for help.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't quite remember that, but there was some. Actually, I don't know where I'm going with this, but the Trade Federation are not completely defeated. They're joining up with other people later on.
Yes, they will join. Well, they will join up with the other members of the Trade Federation group and the other Outer Rim people.
There was the Banking Guild, and then there was Techno Union Army.
Yep, the Techno Union, the banking. Yeah, it was just basically other to form the giant the Confederacy of Independent Systems.
Oh, yeah.
The CIS for short.
Oh, yes. Which we'll see in the later movies.
Yep.
And then we cut back to Obi-Wan and Yoda. They're discussing Qui-Gon's dying wish. And while Yoda's like, the Council has agreed to make you a Jedi Knight, but we do not agree with your decision to train Anakin.
I will train Anakin no matter what, on behalf of Qui-Gon's dying wish.
And then, of course, you hear this music in the background. Dun, 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 dun.
I
You kind of hear a little bit of that when Yoda's like, this boy's future is clouded.
trained as a Jedi Knight, he will be. And then we get to the song, or the theme, the funeral, which will be played again in Padme's death and the rise of Vader.
Which actually, it made more sense in that scene than it does with this one. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Well, think about it this way, because it was a critical loss for Anakin.
Yes, it was.
And then when it was played again, it was another critical loss.
Well, in this case, it was a critical loss for the Jedi. It wasn't really a critical loss for Anakin per se.
He lost a father figure.
Yeah, you could say that. But it's like I just feel the music's more impactful in Revenge of the Sith than it is here.
Anyway, so but yeah.
Agree to disagree.
Yeah,
on
agreed.
that one.
Yeah, agreed to disagree. Because I view it as because it was a critical loss. Because without the father figure, Sidious could come in and do his own influence. Because Qui-Gon would have helped, keep Anakin away completely from engulfing the dark side.
And then you see this little exchange between Yoda and Mace Windu.
And also Anakin and Obi-Wan, where Obi-Wan, tells Anakin, "I will train you to become a Jedi."
I promise you that.
Yep.
And it's kind of interesting with the little Yoda Mace Windu exchange. Always two there are, a master and an apprentice, which was destroyed, the master or the apprentice. And then it cuts to Palpatine's face.
Yep, where everyone knows a little bit, even now, where it's like, you killed the apprentice, unfortunately. The master lives.
And then Palpatine's probably like in his head, I knew hiring him would be no good.
Or it's like more of like, unfortunate that he died. Well, at least he thought he died. Unfortunate of his death.
But it's okay, he can be replaced.
Yeah, it's like, I already got another one in place.
Yeah, because you were telling me that apparently Dooku was doing some stuff while the Phantom Menace happened at the same time.
Yep, it was the fact that not only that, he was basically responsible for the data loss of Kamino.
Yeah, because I thought Sidious was the one who had deleted all that.
Nope, it was Dooku using the codes of Sifo Dyas.
Oh yeah, apparently that would. Yeah, he was telling me this. This happens at the same time that the Phantom Menace is going on.
Yep, and then.
Although when the movie came out, nobody knew that until they actually released it.
Yeah, nobody knew who was responsible for deleting the Kamino of the archives until the Tale of the Jedi came out, where it was actually Dooku who did it using Sifo Dyas encryptions, or clearance, and then. He eventually meets up with Sidious and discuss, basically. And this is, basically when, after Qui-Gon died, basically Dooku meets up with Sidious to discuss, what transpired at Naboo.
Yeah. I think maybe the way I'm looking at that scene in my head, it's like Dooku's in his mind, you all do your thing, leave the Dark Lord to me. And then that's when the Dark Lord corrupts him.
Yeah, it did not play out like that way, though. It's just more of
The way I bring that up is because Christopher Lee also played Saruman in Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. There's a scene in The Hobbit, the third one, where he goes, leave Sauron to me. And that's when we know Sauron's going to corrupt him.
Oh, yep.
It's I kind of wonder if the scene played out like that, and Sidious, in this case, stood in for Sauron, and then, you got Christopher Lee as Dooku.
Yeah. I'll say this, though, it did not play out like that. It was just more of you've gone too far this time. I don't know what you mean. Qui-Gon, or Qui-Gon's death. You allow Maul to kill him. You lost an apprentice, and so did I.
That was in Tales of the Jedi, right?
Yep.
Okay, I need to watch this scene myself. because it sounds really interesting.
Yep, and it was also the death of Yaddle.
Oh yeah, because you were telling me the female Yoda, Yaddle, was watching them and sort of figured out what was going on.
Yep.
And instead of going back to report to the council, she decided to take them head on.
Yep. Try to end it quickly before it grows, and yeah, it's like you could have stopped it more if you would have just reported it back to the Jedi. But now you try to confront it, now you died, and now it becomes more of a secret still.
Oh yeah. But yeah, once the funeral scene's all wrapped up, then we got the big celebration scene.
The parade of the victory, like it was in episode 4, basically. The parade sequence.
Yeah, and in this case, like, the music for both scenes, really well done.
Yep.
And memorable.
Yep. Where you have the kind of like this ball, energy ball or something like that, symbolizing their union or something like that, or whatever the case may be, peace or whatever. But their celebratory victory, Anakin in Jedi robes, and the little parade on the side.
Yeah, because that's what a Padawan looks like.
Yep. Obi-Wan right next to him. Padme smiling, everyone's smiling and happy, cheering, celebratory victory. And then you have the credit scene, which goes all the way through.
And of course, it plays John Williams' amazing score.
Yeah, a lot of their amazing score. And this version, at least, in the theater ones.
Actually, this has been a thing, I think, since the movie came out. But you hear Darth Vader's breathing at the end.
Yep. You hear you hear Darth Vader in the back end.
Yeah, because Vader's coming.
Well, we all knew that, though.
Yeah, pretty much. And usually, if we had seen this in 1999, that's it. That's the end of the movie.
Yeah, no, I don't think they would have. You wouldn't heard Vader.
Well, actually, that was in the original cut.
Oh, that was?
That's always been there.
Mm.
Yeah, but back in 1999, no post-credit stuff. It just ends.
Yep, just ends.
Because the post-credit craze didn't start till like years down the road.
Really, Marvel kind of like jumpstarts that.
Didn't Pirates of the Caribbean jumpstart it?
They did the more of the to be continue.
Well, it's like, yeah, they did that, but Pirates of the Caribbean kind of did it before Marvel did. Like, Dead Man's Chest had a post-credit scene. World's End had a post-credit scene. I think Curse of the Black Pearl did, too.
I don't think Curse of the Black Pearl did.
No, I remember there was a post-credit where we see Barbossa dragged away, and then the monkey takes one of the coins and becomes a skeleton again.
I know in the Dead Man's Chest, he comes back with, due to Calypso's influence, you could say, more likely.
Yes.
And then, and that was it. It had a to be continued, though.
Well, there was a post-credit at the end where you see those tribal native people and the dog's their king, and the dog's got the bone in his mouth. I remember that.
I do know at World's End there was the post-credit, though, where it was Elizabeth and Will, child.
Yeah.
Waiting 10 years later, basically.
And then Will comes back to be with them for
Yep.
at least a day before he goes back out to sea.
Yep.
But yeah, Pirates did it before Marvel did.
Yeah, but it really boomed because of Marvel, though.
Yeah, pretty much. If they were to do post-credit stuff for Star Wars now, I just don't know if it would be nearly as good.
I don't think so, no. But what did happen, though, at the end, though, after you hear Vader's breathing, was a sneak peek at Acolyte.
Yeah, the Star Wars Disney Plus series, The Acolyte.
Yep.
Which I have not seen the trailer of until today.
Yeah, basically, and I told Sammy, you know when this took place, but I did tell you it took place before the Phantom Menace.
Yeah, it's supposed to be way before that because you see all the Jedi and they're going up against an assassin.
Yep. Going up against an assassin who, very similar to Maul in the Phantom Menace, only spoke very few, but for the most part silent while fighting. Because you don't want to disclose on who you are or who you work for.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I don't know if I want to watch that series. I know there's a ton of Star Wars content that I probably need to catch up on.
Yep.
But I mean, I just don't know if that trailer got me excited enough.
Yeah. In the meantime, though, in the retrospect, though, because overall, though, where do we now, as prequel fans, after years later?
Well, actually, I don't know if I'm a big prequel fan. because I'd have to watch the Clone Wars stuff to really figure out if I am.
All right, because I've watched a lot of the Clone Wars stuff. Because
Well,
besides the movies,
Well, let me explain why I might not be the strongest of prequel fans.
Yep.
Because, again, The Phantom Menace came out when I was very young. I
Yep.
got to see maybe partial bits, but
Yep.
full blast of Revenge of the Sith's hype.
Yep.
Not the hype with the whole trilogy.
I would say, yeah, because we were young definitely for episode 1. Episode 2, we were probably like, okay, because that was 2002. That was, okay, so for me, 98, 99, 2001, 5 years old in 2002.
Yeah, I remember seeing Attack of the Clones in the theater, and I actually had to get up and take a bathroom break with that one back then. But
yeah, because I do remember watching Attack of the Clones, probably at home, but I also do remember a lot of it because of the 2D, the Cartoon Network Star Wars miniseries. I remember watching that. I remember playing a lot of Star Wars games. I remember also getting hyped up for the Star Wars Battlefront, both 1 and 2. Revenge of the Sith game, which came out before the movie. Funny enough.
so that spoiled pretty much the whole thing.
I believe so, although I believe as well. I think I might have got it after the movie came out, though.
Probably Christmas or birthday present.
I think it was close around that time. But either way, though, it was just the fact that we got the game after I watched the movie, basically. I know that for sure. So luckily for me, I was not spoiled. Although I will say, though, it did follow the movie, though. There were, because of game purposes, though, there were difference of what, happened in terms of, because of cutscene, basically.
Yeah, and I remember there was some extended scenes in that, too.
Yeah.
But, I think where I'm coming at, because you're a bigger prequel fan than I am.
Yep.
I just feel like, again, if I had been born a little earlier, or maybe a decade prior, I could have been a big prequel fan. Because I feel like I was too young to really, get all the hype surrounding that trilogy, and only got the biggest blast of it with the third one.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw the Cartoon Network 2D animated series that Genndy Tartakovsky did.
Yeah.
It's just, I just kind of feel like, I saw the original trilogy first, like most people. I just kind of feel like, because I didn't absorb so much of the hype, that's why I'm not a massive prequel person.
Yeah, for me, I was just because, not only because not just because of the Phantom Menace, some other Star Wars movies I know, but not just of the Phantom Menace at the time for me, Attack of the Clones, the 2D miniseries, all the other Star Wars games I have played, which is both Battlefronts 1 and 2, Bounty Hunter, I believe the pod racing game at the.
Oh yeah, the pod racer game, which I think they may have ported over to other stuff.
Yep, I know it ported over to the Xbox Store. I know that for sure. But I've been playing that a lot at the Lifetime Kids Center, growing up a little bit. Whenever there's in the computer section, wanted to go there, played the Star Wars game. So yeah, that one, Battlefront 1 and 2, Bounty Hunter, Revenge of the Sith game. Star Wars Starfighter and Jedi Starfighter.
Oh yeah, I think you showed me a little bit of those too.
Yep, those were fun as well. So I played a lot of Star Wars games growing up, that is for sure. And the Clone Wars game as well.
Oh yeah, you showed me a little bit of that too.
Yep, so that one was fun as well. I also had a Game Boy game of Star Wars Attack of the Clones as well. I also had the 3D, or the Nintendo DS version of Revenge of the Sith as well. So yes, I was big into the prequels.
Usually the handheld stuff doesn't get a lot of attention compared to the console stuff, but it's interesting that you had that.
Yeah. I also had the PlayStation Portables and a few of those Star Wars games as well. A lot of it is Battlefront.
There was a Battlefront on the PSP, I remember that.
There were actually two, Rebel Squadron and Elite Squadron. There were two.
Alright, so where would you place the Phantom Menace in terms of retrospect?
Retrospect for me. Because I feel like Episode 3 for me is the best one out of all the Star Wars film. And then
Episode 3 is the best of the prequels. Everybody can agree to that.
And then I would put Empire Strikes Back right below it at number 2.
Empire's the best one for me.
Yeah. And I would think for all the people in the originals trilogy as well, they would agree that that one was the best one out of the originals.
And most people agree it's the best one of them all, actually.
Yeah, it's a debate between Episode 5 and Episode 3. And funny enough, and those are the two films where the Empire won, where the Sith won.
Oh, yeah.
Think about it in that respect. Top 2 films in terms of Star Wars is when the Sith wins.
Yep.
Anyways, so that, and then I would say, because I think the third one you would have to give up to like either episode 4 or episode 6 for being like out of the 9 films basically. I know for sure episode 8 and 9 were like my bottom 2.
They're the bottom 2 for a lot of people.
Yeah. I would probably put Attack of the Clones also below that as well. Or above it. So, like, those are the worst one. Attack of the Clones for me is probably... That one's debatable between that one and episode 7. And then I'm putting the Phantom Menace somewhere in that middle ground, basically.
Middle area.
Yeah.
That's how you would rank them?
In terms of retrospect. Because I looking back on it more... Yes, both Attack of the Clones and The Phantom Menace, those two in particular in the prequels, had their issues. However, I've grown to understand more of why The Phantom Menace was the way it was, due to the fact that since it was still coming in from the High Republic era, that there was a lot more peace, and that way more political talk was more in place still, rather than this rancorous thing that we've come to know, basically.
Yeah, that's actually something I need to bring up about the prequel trilogy is if you watch the original trilogy, all 3 in a row, they usually those movies stand on their own.
Yep.
And they have a nice flow to them. Whereas with the prequels, there's a lot of like filling in the gaps and the blanks.
Yeah.
And I know there are some people that really like getting into all that information.
Yeah.
But not everybody likes to do that.
Yeah.
Like there's some people that the prequels should have stood on their own and have a nice flow. But there's like time gaps between them. There's a bunch of stuff that needs to get filled in.
Yeah.
And some people do have an issue with that.
Yeah.
I do as well because it's like there's all this side stuff. I have to understand this to really appreciate it. When a movie should stand on its own without all the side additions. And actually, Marvel's done this too lately.
Yeah.
All their TV shows on the side and to understand the movies.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, Star Wars did it first, guys.
Yeah, Star Wars was the one that technically did it first. And it's technically successful in the long run because the other producer starts to build upon the lore behind it with their other shows, which then you look back upon the movies where they're kind of deviating from a little bit into liking them either more or less or however you feel about the film.
Yeah, and it's like I do need to watch the Clone Wars stuff to see if I really do like all of this. Because here's my personal ranking with the Star Wars films.
Yep.
Episode 5 would be the best one for me because it's the one I watched the most and was invested in the most.
Yep.
It's just the best made movie in general and one of the best sequels ever made. A New Hope would be at number 2.
All right.
Because that was the introduction film, and if you watch its original unaltered theatrical cut, it really was a groundbreaking movie when it came out.
Yep.
I think I could put Episode 3 above Episode 6.
Yeah.
Because Episode 3, that is the best of the prequel trilogy, and it's got a lot of the best scenes, a lot of the best battles. It's got a lot of really memorable dialogue.
For me, why I put Episode 3 above all the other Star Wars films, because it is like the tie-in, basically, to everything. It explains why everything in 4, 5, and 6 happened. It explains how Vader became. What happened to the Republic? How did the Empire came to be?
But yeah, Revenge of the Sith, again, that would be number 3. Return of the Jedi, I think it's really well made. It's just when you get to the Ewoks, that's like the cutesy part of the movie, and that kind of brings it down, but it's still a well done movie.
Hey, those Ewoks can be scary, alright? Those Ewoks can be scary.
Scary?
Have you not seen some of those horror stuff that people have done? And even if you play...
Wait. Someone did a horror thing of the Ewoks? What did they turn into Five Nights at Endor?
No. Think of it as more of like... Because there's a lore behind it that they are cannibalistic. Why do you think there's helmets on pikes at the end of the film?
Oh? They're cannibals? But I thought they were...
And you don't think they were not cannibals? What do you think they were going to do to Luke and Han?
Oh gosh.
And Chewie?
Oh god.
What do you think they were going to do to them?
Well then again, they kind of look like bears, so it makes sense they eat meat.
Yeah, and it's like, what do you think they were going to do to Luke, Han, and the others What like the helmets on pikes? What do you think they did with those troopers?
Oh, they ate them.
Yeah.
I thought they just collected the helmets for drums.
Yeah. And when you play in the new Battlefront 2, there's like a hunt mode basically or survival where you're the Empire, like those Empire troopers at night against Ewoks.
Well, if they called it Five Nights at Endor, then I would believe you a little more.
I just think about this. You're in a pitch black dark, and you are a soldier out there in the middle of the night of the forest, and all you could and you're getting damaged left and right, and all you can see is those little tight glowy eyes of those little Ewoks as they have their sticks at you, and they're ready to charge at you with their.
Oh, now you're making it sound like the pygmy mummies from The Mummy Returns.
Yeah.
Or maybe if you threw a predator into that forest, that would make it more frightening.
No, but those things can be scary. Those they can, yeah. And people if you look up those Ewoks too, they are scary. They can be scary.
Well, someone can. That kind of happens. You take a cute thing and you make it terrifying.
Yeah, you can. They can be terrifying, though.
But I never thought they were cannibals. I just thought they collected the helmets because nice instrument. They can make good drums.
Yeah. I mean, which they did use it. But what else do you think they? Again, it's like the idea. What do you think they were gonna do?
Well, it's just like when people look back on Return of the Jedi, they just see the Ewoks and these like cute little things.
Yeah.
Some have even called them the Care Bears of Star Wars.
Yeah, but those Care Bears can actually be vicious.
I've seen some decent parodies of those characters enough.
Yeah. And whenever how we joke about how Teletubbies are like this cute, innocent things.
Well, the Teletubbies is more like LSD fever dreams.
Yeah.
Because people have said there's like stuff in Teletubbies that was inspired by LSD fever dreams.
Yeah.
There was one segment in particular that was banned, but you can see it on the internet.
Yeah, and some people still have nightmares about those Teletubbies too.
Yeah, and I go through the comment section sometime, and it's like, this thing terrified me when I was young. I mean, but then again, some of the one banned segment of Teletubbies that was frightening, it probably inspired Five Nights at Freddy's, because those cutout characters kind of look like them almost.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah.
Yeah, but Return of the Jedi, I'd put that at number 4 because although it's well made, the Ewok cutesy thing kind of brings it down a bit. Right. But it's still a relatively well-made film, and it wraps up stuff nicely. Let me think. I would put Attack of the Clones above The Phantom Menace.
All right.
Because with Attack of the Clones, at least we're getting to a war. There's some interesting stuff they're talking about.
Yeah.
There's stuff in there to not like, but there is stuff in there to like.
Yeah. Definitely Jango Fett being one of them. The Battle of Geonosis is another one.
Camino, and just seeing all the clone army being formed, that's another good one.
Yeah, that's another good one, which is probably, I would make it higher than episode 7 for my list. So basically, my list now, all the sequel stuff in the bottom tier. Basically, your first 3, the sequels are all bottom tier for me, although episode 7 is probably going to be...
Well, actually,
high praise is for a sequel.
Actually, I would put 7 above The Phantom Menace.
Oh, for you, all right.
Because 7 was basically an attempt to get the fan base back, get them like going. Okay, you're gonna watch a real Star Wars film again. We're gonna make it as good as it gets.
Yeah.
Where I think, I agree with people that 7 does rehash A New Hope.
It does. That's why it's just basically another version of The New Hope.
Yeah, but the point of that film was basically to remind people of how good they had it with Star Wars.
And that's fair. Which is probably why it was the best out of the sequel. So. Yeah,
and I mean, I'm trying to figure out would I put 7 above Attack of the Clones. I'm not sure if I want to, because Attack of the Clones, that's the pilot episode to all Clone Wars related stuff. Mm-hmm. And at least there's some interesting things in there that you could look at that as, well, this is all the setup, then you got all the cool stuff that happens later on.
Yeah.
But with 7, it's basically retreading old ground.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought it was good when I saw it in the cinema, but it does backtrack. It's kind of like a clone of Episode 4.
Yeah.
And then Phantom Menace is, to me, one of the weaker movies. Because, again, it's such a small-scale film when you think about it.
Yeah.
Because, Star Wars is this big and exciting property, and you want something really big to go down.
Yeah.
But with Phantom Menace, there can be exciting stuff, but it's a very small-scale film.
Yeah. Well, yeah. For me, though, even though it is a small scale in terms of, you're going to Naboo, you're going to Tatooine, Coruscant, back to Naboo. However, though, you are getting introduced to this basically the Republic, the back end of the High Republic area, and you're kind of getting to know. All right, you have young Anakin, you have Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, who's probably everyone's most liked Jedi that died pretty early.
Yeah,
Qui-Gon Jinn.
I mean, he was a very stoic character. I will say that.
The pod racing scenes was fun, and I kind of like. And then the Battle of Naboo was actually pretty entertaining, basically, because you have the 4 battle sequences happening: the battle on the plains, the battle in the city, the battle in space. You have the Jedi duels, basically, the Jedi versus Sith duel. All that to accumulate to this kind of like, in terms of the duel of the fates, basically, the duel to determine the outcome of Anakin. Even though we all know what happens to Anakin, but it's the idea of like it builds upon the what if scenario of had Qui-Gon been alive, Anakin could have
turned out better.
But we all know what happened. Qui-Gon probably dies, and that influenced Anakin to dug in deeper to the dark side.
Yeah, but with the Phantom Menace, I think that's kind of the sentiment a lot of people had, is like they went in expecting it to be this big event picture, they wanted it to be the biggest movie ever, and then they ended up getting something that was not quite as big as they wanted it to be.
No.
It was small to their eyes.
Which is why they got disappointment, because it was basically a small scale, because you're going only to 3 planets, and you're going back to the same planet twice.
Yeah, and there's like no epic war scenes. There's no big war going on. It's just a very small little thing.
Not like a grand war like you see in Geonosis or in Episode 3, where you see this grand war at the start of the movie with Coruscant, and eventually Kashyyyk and Utapau, where grand wars are happening. However, though, I feel like to me, because of the Battle of Naboo, of how important it brought about, not just for the Clone War aspect, but in terms of the outcome that it eventually happened, because Qui-Gon's death was an important thing that led to Darth Vader becoming, or how Anakin becomes Darth Vader.
Yeah, I mean, it's just with that context that makes people like the movie a little more. But I think really with Phantom Menace, because George took such a long break from Star Wars,
yeah,
I kind of feel like when he's got the series back up and running again, I mean, he didn't quite make it as big as the original trilogy,
Yeah.
Like, he must have had some kind of challenges behind the scenes when making this, and he never consulted anybody about it.
Yeah, so I kind of feel like for me, it'll be Episode 3, Episode 5, Episode 4... And then I would probably say like Episode 6 that's 4. Episode 1, then Episode 2, and then 7,
and then
9 and 8.
Yeah, and 8 and 9 are definitely the worst ones, but mostly because of the creative decisions that went into those.
Yes. I really didn't like 8 because of how they kind of just... They took the idea of 7, or what was building up to be.
Yeah, and they tossed it all out.
They tossed it all out, yes. And then they also had another storyline that was basically...
Yeah, the casino subplot.
The subplot, which ended up being, if you think about it hard enough, people, turned out to be... It should have never have happened in the first place because of what eventually happened.
Oh, yeah. People have commented on that, but yeah, I think the main problem with 8 is that the director and writer Rian Johnson, he wanted to subvert expectations with 8.
Yep.
He did not handle it the right way.
No, and I think he also tried to deconstruct the idea of like the Jedi or something like that, and it turned out poorly.
Yeah, he did a deconstruction approach, which if we look at other projects that are not Star Wars, deconstruction usually ends badly.
Yeah, for most, except I did see a video where they talk about there was one instance of a deconstruction that actually worked out better.
And that was?
It was actually coming from a game, Knights of the Old Republic #2, when they talk about like the deconstruction of the Jedi a little bit as well. I think because that was the Nihilus whole thing. Because in that one, you are a exiled Jedi, basically. So you got to think about it in the perspective of this is another instance when the Jedi's High Council at that point was also very questionable at best at its time. Another instance is before the Grand Fall. But anyways, this is another time when it was very questionable. So you got this like deconstruction idea of the Jedi basically, and the Nihilists being like a Sith who got too power hungry, which is got even more dangerous of us, for a Sith too as well. And the guy was pointing out how the deconstruction in that game and how they kind of went about it was a lot better than what happened in Episode 8.
Maybe because BioWare just has better writers than Hollywood does.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the case, why it worked better.
Yeah, at least for the Knights of the Old Republic #2. Not the MMO. Not the EA.
Oh yeah, the big one.
Yeah, we're talking about the Knights of the Old Republic.
That LucasArts developed with BioWare.
One of those games where it's like you still have your choice and stuff like that too. Yeah, not the MMO, but it was like prior to the MMO.
Yeah, I mean that's just kind of the thing with deconstruction is like if you're gonna do it, at least have some talent to know what you're doing, because usually people who deconstruct, like you gotta sort of be wary. Do they have enough talent as a writer to where they can convince you that this is compelling, or are they doing stuff that they think is cool but not everyone else is thinking is going to be cool?
Yeah.
Which is what happened with Episode 8 is Rian Johnson, he did whatever he wanted. They gave him full creative control, and all the choices that he made, he thought they were pretty cool, but many of us didn't think they were cool.
No, we didn't like the idea. And then Episode 9, and this is where why it was slightly better, but still not that great, because this is where you tried to rectify your mistakes at 8. You try to rectify it at Episode 9, and Episode 9 was trying to do that, basically, for the most part, while also throwing some other creative ideas as well, which is just too messy, basically.
Yeah, Episode 9 was a mess, and the original script and idea they had for it, it was better, but it would not have been perfect.
No, I think we're talking about the original director that was supposed to be in there, but eventually it left, right?
Yeah, Colin Trevorrow, he left to go do Jurassic World Dominion.
Yes. That one, if we remember the script, that one could have made it a lot better because of what sort of transpired, basically. Rey kind of like growing more better as a Jedi. She's kind of a little bit more, well trained, basically, to where in that version we probably could have understood it better in terms of her being a little bit more of a proper Jedi. Because it seemed like that way, especially when she kind of grows to more of like a double, like the Darth Maul, like double-bladed lightsaber, which would have been a lot more suitable to her because of how much she used the spear from Episode 7.
Oh yeah, that's something I definitely would have wanted to have seen.
Yeah, and then I think she eventually dies, but then comes back to life. Kylo Ren was still alive, I believe, in the film as well.
Yeah, and he didn't. I don't think he converted to the light side in the original script.
I don't. Maybe he did.
I'd have to read it again.
I have to read it again. I do know he confronts Vader and loses, even though it was a memory or like one of those like the Luke in the cave sequence.
Oh yeah, and someone actually made a sequence of that.
Yeah, where Kylo Ren did it, against Vader, but he loses. Basically, he loses that fight.
Because he's not as strong as Lord Vader was.
Nope. So, yeah, I know in the script he actually loses the fight. Then there was supposed to be this sort of like, you could say, it was supposed to be similar to like the Battle of Endor per se, but except it takes place in Coruscant. So it's supposed to be like this kind of like this true sort of rebellion.
That actually would have been better to see.
Yeah, because it kind of was supposed to build up kind of like how Coruscant became more of like a corrupted state, basically. And then you eventually see like a true rebellion kind of broke out, basically, in Coruscant.
Oh, that's something I probably would have wanted to have seen.
And then General Hux dies by means of seppuku.
Seppuku is
Seppuku, yep. Seppuku, yep.
Oh, that's interesting. But yeah, the way it's like you're describing this, it's like we could have had something better with that original idea.
We could have, yeah. I think if you read it, we could have actually had something better with the original idea.
I do remember reading it. I'd have to refresh again. But
Yeah, I need to refresh again, especially a little bit more with. I know Rey loses to Kylo Ren.
yeah, I think I remember that too.
But she still comes back alive. I'm trying to remember if Kylo Ren still lives, or if he dies by other means, or something like that. And not what we saw in Episode 9.
Yeah, I mean, that sequel trilogy and the way it was handled and stuff, I remember just walking out of Episode 9 and I'm starting to look back a lot more fondly on the prequels and the Clone Wars stuff.
Yeah.
Because at least with the prequels, there was some kind of a plan behind them.
Yes.
It wasn't the greatest plan, but it was a plan.
Yeah. You saw from each of the film the building, basically. The building blocks to Episode 3, which was the biggest one, basically.
Mm-hmm. And with the sequels, it was messy, but with the prequels, there was some kind of a plan behind it.
Yeah.
And it's just like, when you watch the Clone Wars series, it fills in the gaps. There's other sorts of blanks that can be filled with the additional material.
Oh, yeah, definitely, for sure. And they're still filling in a lot more, especially with a lot more of the Order 66 sort of thing as well.
Still not over with Order 66.
Because we're starting to figure out a little bit more and more, just that, there are more than a few Jedi that survived than just Obi-Wan and Yoda.
I mean, there has to have been, because, all the ones in the temple are dead, but there's others that were outside the galaxy, and, there were some that got killed, but there's got to be more out there.
Yeah, and that's how we figure out Cal Kestis survived. Caleb Doom, which eventually brought on Ezra. And then some other Jedis, that we kind of see, and it's like, oh, they survive as well.
Yeah, and then there was the Jedi that had Star Killer, but again, The Force Unleashed is non-canon.
Yeah, no, it's not canon anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's like there's all this information that they're still doing, but it's like, how much can they do before they completely run out of ideas?
Yeah, especially with the Order 66, where again, it is a very significant. It's still a significant story in terms of Episode 3, because that's how you figure out how the Jedis died, by means of one guy having a little chip command that says Order 66, and every clone in the clone army starts to hunt Jedis.
Yeah, it's like a sleeper program almost.
It basically was a sleeper. It was a sleeper code.
It's like if you put a microchip in somebody's brain and then you give them the commands on what to do.
That's exactly what it was.
Okay, yeah, that's how I'm trying to explain it.
Yep. But that's what I'm saying. That's exactly how it was. That's how in the Clone Wars. That's how it kind of went. And Ahsoka actually saved a couple clones. One in particular, because of the removal of the chip.
That must have been in Bad Batch or Rebels.
No, Clone Wars.
Oh, in Clone Wars.
It was referenced initially in Rebels that Rex and some other clones had their chips removed. But it was shown in the Clone Wars final season.
Okay, I really do need to watch this show because there's a lot of blanks that definitely need to be filled up.
It was also sort of reference about a chip in there as well, in the Clone Wars as well, before being shown.
Just hold on a second, everybody.
We'll probably need to wrap this up too.
Anyways, yeah, definitely, because this has been going on for a while.
All you need to know when you do look back at the Clone Wars, the series, the 3D series, pay attention to whenever you hear a clone name 5.
Clone 5.
Yeah, or a clone that goes by the name of 5s.
Okay.
And then once you hear that name, or 5s, that's when that'll get you to more of that chip stuff.
Alright then. Yeah, definitely need to look into that. But anyway, we gotta wrap this up because this has been going on for quite some time, and
so yeah,
it'll probably be our longest one to date. But
for a retrospect, because I know for me a lot, I'm a big Star Wars fan.
Yeah, and
especially with the shirt and
I
bringing
mean,
in the lightsaber.
yeah, and I mean, I like Star Wars too. You know, it's just I just feel like my upbringing with it was really strange.
Yeah.
Because I only got a little bit of the prequel hype, not the full hype.
Yep.
And I of course love the original trilogy, and I did see all the sequel stuff. It's just my upbringing with it was a little strange.
Yeah, I remember watching some of the original stuff for sure, 4, 5, 6 in the VHS tape, but I was fully invested into the prequel stuff. Like I mentioned in the games, mentioned in the TV shows, and the other stuff. I was fully invested into the prequel,
Yeah.
basically around the Attack of the Clones era, basically, I would say. It was just like that gravitating stuff.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what was I fully invested in during that time. There's probably something else, but I was invested in some other stuff back then.
Yeah, probably some other things too, but I just remember for me it was a lot of Star Wars stuff. I had 3 lightsabers. This I got like a few years back. But I had like Anakin lightsaber. I had a Dooku lightsaber. I think I had a 3rd lightsaber. I forgot which one it was. I remember having 3 lightsabers.
Oh, hang on a
It was
second.
like 2. It was like 2 or 3 lightsabers. I remember Anakin. I remember Dooku's. I know you had 3 lightsabers. One right there.
This is Obi-Wan's in case you can't see it. It's from episode 1. We
Yep.
also had Qui-Gon's, but it was blue.
It was like another, or at least the blade looked like Qui-Gon, but it was blue. And then you also had Maul.
I had Maul when that was like one of the first Maul lightsabers they ever released for episode 1, but then somebody broke it and
Yep.
we had to throw it out.
I had a bunch of Star Wars toys as well. I had one of the episode 2 Jedi Starfighter ones. I think that was,
Yeah, it was that little handheld ship one where you kind of move it around.
That, I had that other one. I had a bigger
I did play it around with it a bit, but I never made any sense of it.
I think it was just kind of like it was, because the thing was, it was a handheld thing that looked like a tiny pistol, basically. But it's the ship that was the top, and you kind of like fly around, move it around, and you gotta go, pew, pew, pew. I also had a Jango Fett pistol, too.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
I also had a clone helmet. I also had a giant ATTE, if you remember that one.
I remember the giant Millennium Falcon, not the ATTE.
I eventually got
wait. No, I do remember the ATTE. I thought you were talking about the AT-AT, but no, you're talking about the big ATTE.
Yeah, the ATTE from the Republic. I also did have the Millennium Falcon. I had a bunch of other Star Wars figures as well. Like toy figures. So lightsabers, Millennium Falcon, ATTE, toy figures, the Anakin's personal ship from the 2D one, and then the other Jedi Starfighter from Attack of the Clones.
Intriguing.
I had a lot of Star Wars stuff.
Yeah, and I remember some of those quite well. And I mean, I had my fair share of Star Wars stuff, but not as big as other people.
Yeah, and then, like I said, all the games, too, that I had as well. And I also did have Force Unleashed, too. The first one. Not the second one, but the first one.
Yeah, I have played that on PS3, and that did get an upgrade in the graphics.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember having a little trouble with it, but it was still pretty good fun.
Although, for me, when I got the Force Unleashed, it was the PlayStation 2 version, not... Because at the time, I just had the PlayStation 2.
It was the tail end of the PS2 era when it came out.
Yeah, and it didn't have the cutscene, although it was still very similar, but it didn't have like the high-end cutscene like it did in the PlayStation 3 or the 360.
Yeah, and I actually remember watching you play that, but it's been a very long time since I've seen the PS2 version.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah,
We gotta end this up though shortly though.
Yeah, because this has been going on for a while.
Yep.
Last thing I want to mention is the Phantom Menace effect.
Yep.
There's been other instances throughout media history where there's been stuff that's been about as hyped up as the Phantom Menace, and then it kind of turned out disappointing. At least for me, it did.
Yep.
Like I remember someone said the first Hobbit could have been to Lord of the Rings fans what Phantom Menace was to Star Wars.
Yep.
It wasn't. The first Hobbit wasn't. It's the later two, though, that unfortunately brought in more disappointment.
Yeah.
And then for me, my Phantom Menace was Jurassic World, because I was such a big Jurassic Park fan.
Well, you were a lot more bigger of a Jurassic Park, that franchise.
Yeah, because like Jurassic World, I really wanted it to be the comeback of the lifetime.
Yep.
It wasn't. And now they're still continuing it with a 7th film, and it's like, oh my gosh. And then Samurai Jack season 5 was another Phantom Menace for me, at least up until the ending, because I don't like the ending of Samurai Jack.
Oh, okay.
I was so hyped about the 5th season because it's like there's going to be a new Samurai Jack. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
And once the ending came around, well, the season started off just fine. It got pretty good around the middle, but once it got to the end, that's when things really, really got bad.
Did you not like how it ended because how Jack just kind of became, alone basically?
Well, no, season 3 set up the ending and pretty much told you what the ending was going to be. But they never went ahead with that, and what we got was weaker, much weaker.
Oh, you didn't like Aku's,
Well, in season 3, episode 32, they set up that what the ending was going to be. We know which portal he's going to use to get back.
Yep.
They completely destroy that portal, and they never follow up with it. So disappointing of an ending. And I think it's because Genndy Tartakovsky has admitted he was not very good with endings.
Yep.
His best ending, though, was in Clone Wars 2003, because that leads right into Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, because that was literally, if you could think about it in terms of like if you watch it, because it at the ending scene, because Anakin gets everybody get going back to Coruscant, and literally the final scene as it backs out, it is the Battle of Coruscant, which in Episode 3, it's literally that scene, the Battle of Coruscant.
Yeah, and it's like that was his best ending, but it's like there's been other instances throughout media history where stuff's taken a long break and then it comes back, and then it kind of has something similar to with the Phantom Menace where there's a disappointment.
Yep.
I just feel like we haven't really moved on from that practice, and it could happen again.
Yeah.
It could very much happen again. It did not happen with the Avatar sequels, though.
Yeah.
At least in my eyes, it didn't.
Yep.
But anyway, we got to wrap this up. This will probably be our longest one yet. But
this is probably was just because of a lot of talks of Star Wars.
Yeah, and I mean, it was interesting to see this in the theater and get an idea of what it
Yeah.
was for 1999. And the very last thing I'll say, thank you, whoever did this. Thank you for putting in the 20th Century Fox logo. Because I know Disney owns Star Wars now, but thank you for putting that in because that's a critical point of film history. Do not forget it.
Yep.
It's critical. But anyway.
Although it still was bought by Disney, but yes.
Yes. Yeah. But anyway, that's it.
Yep.
That was a good anniversary release, and I had a good time.
Yep.
I mean, I don't really like the Phantom Menace that much, but it was still a good time.
I enjoy I enjoy myself with Star Wars because it's Star Wars Day.
I mean, there's stuff to like in the Phantom Menace, but outside of that, it's definitely one of the weaker ones for me. I know you like it a lot, but
Yep. At least it grew upon me over the years. Let's just put it that perspective because of what happened with the sequels.
Yeah, that could be the case. But I think we got to be done with this. But
may the Force be with you all.
Agreed. May the Force be with you all.
May the Force be with you.
Oh, and next time, last thing,
Yeah.
I know I keep saying this. Next time we will be back for Kingdom of Planet of the Apes. Because the trailers for that have looked interesting. I kind of want to see how it plays out, but we're gonna plan that out, and when we come back, we'll tell you how that goes.
All right.
Now, y'all have a good day, and just be safe out there.
Yep, and may the Force be with you again.
And however you celebrate this, if you're seeing that Skywalker Saga marathon, all the power to you.
Yeah.
We'll see you around.